haven't talked about this case with anyone. You haven't heard anything about this case outside the courtroom. I haven't independently investigated the facts of the law, and that nothing else has occurred to affect your ability to be fair and impartial. If you have followed my instructions and there's nothing to report, please raise your hand to indicate that. Thank you. So I believe we're going to recall the witness who is on the witness stand.
Thank you, Your Honor. People to Commonwealth of Massachusetts recall David Crouse.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So you remain under oath.
For Crouse, when we left off, you were discussing what is now Exhibit 138 in this case, which shows a tower analysis of towers, certain towers in South Boston. Do you recall that?
Yes, I do.
And I'll use it the old-fashioned way for a moment to go quicker. Is that coming up? Okay, I think it's coming up now. And I hope to be able to switch to a digital version of these slides in a moment. But for now, looking at that exhibit on the screen, looking at the tower that you've pulled out calls for, where the call pull out is to the right of the screen, which shows calls on May 20, I believe that's May 26th, June 9th, and August 10th. We recall you testifying about that tower yesterday.
Yes.
And I believe you indicated that those calls you were able to tell, or the June 9th call, I'm sorry, with specific reference to the June 9th call, you were able to tell which sector of the tower it came from. Is that right?
That's correct.
And can you remind the jury which sector of the tower it came from?
It would be this indicated by this, what this black line is, and it would be the sector of that tower was pointed towards where it says City Point over into this area.
And again, I think you testified that that indicates direction, but not necessarily coverage, right? In other words, you're not saying that coverage would necessarily extend as far as the green dots, only that that's the direction that the call came from. Is that correct?
Correct.
And let me ask you, does this diagram tell us, or can it tell us, I guess is a better way, whether during the relevant period, which is April 30th through September 18th.
So you just moved, yeah.
I moved it. I'm going to recircle it. during the relevant period whether either of these two cell phones, 5482, which has been identified as Michael McCarthy's cell phone, or 2792, which has been identified as Dee's cell phone. Can you tell us whether these cell phones were in that area that I've highlighted in purple, which is the area south of the reserve channel, Your Honor? Does your diagram tell us whether those cell phones were there in that location or that general area at any time that you looked at?
It does not indicate that those phones were in that area.
I know it doesn't indicate that they were in that area, but does it tell us for sure that those cell phones were not in that area during the relevant time?
No.
And why is that? Explain why that is.
As I had started to explain yesterday, the only time I can only interactions with the network is the only thing that is recorded that can be mapped. So if a phone was within that area, but there was no incoming or outgoing call or text, there wouldn't be a reference made in the call detail records to map out.
And if somebody had a cell phone in that area and it was turned off, would there be any record, assuming it stayed turned off the whole time, would there be any record that you could see of that phone being present in that area?
No.
So that's just a limitation of cell site location information in general?
Yes.
I apologize, Your Honor. Had a little technical difficulty, so I'm trying to get this so that I can use the computer, which will make things much quicker. Trooper Crouse, were you also asked in preparation for trial, and let me ask you, in preparing for trial, did you review certain materials?
Yes.
And what did you review?
The call detail records from the phones. Some other documents that were provided.
And in particular, did you review your old KML files that you produced way back early in the investigation? I looked at them briefly, but I usually make that for the investigator and then kind of move more into the other program that I use to create the maps. Did you review cell site mapping information prepared by another expert? Yes. And understanding that your mapping and the other experts' mapping may not be exactly the same functionally in terms of what data or what information you can glean from it, to the extent that you could compare your mapping with the other experts' mapping, were they consistent or inconsistent?
Objection.
Mr. Dean, I'm inclined to sustain that objection unless I have an explanation as to why it would come in.
I'll withdraw the question.
Okay.
Have you seen any cell site mapping information of this cell site, of the information that you mapped, that was different from yours?
Objection.
I think that's the inverse, the sustained.
I'm sorry, I'm still... I guess I'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. I apologize. Were you asked, in particular in preparation for trial, to prepare a cell site mapping of the activities of 2 phones on June 26, 2015.
Yes.
And I'm showing you now Exhibit 139A, and ask you, did you prepare a series of slides in response to that request?
I did.
And do you recognize what 139A is?
The machine isn't working properly.
Should come up now. So now I'm displaying 139A for everyone, Your Honor. Do you recognize what 139A is?
Yes, it's one of the slides that I created.
And which 2 phones were you mapping for June 26, 2015?
The 2792 and the 5482 phones.
2792 again is D's cell phone, 5482 is the defendant's cell phone. Is that right?
Yes, I think.
Okay. And explain what this first slide, 139A, shows.
This would show that the 2792 phone at approximately 8:04 a.m. Is receiving an incoming phone call from the 5482 phone, and that the 2792 phone is located kind of near the top of the slide.
You can indicate the area where it's located.
Okay, so we're talking about this tower up here. So that phone is located to the east of where the lines are for that tower.
Which would be to the right on the
To the
diagram?
right of the diagram, yes.
And can you say exactly where to the right of the lines in the diagram the phone was?
No, I just know that it's within the sector of the footprint of that tower.
And what does the red sort of indication near the bottom of the diagram show?
That the 5482 phone was down within the area of where that cell tower is, towards the left.
So that's, I'm now focusing in on that diagram there. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is that Dorchester-Mattapan
I
line?
believe it is, yes.
And does that show the inverse, that is an outgoing call from McCarthy's cell phone to D's cell phone?
That's correct.
So these boxes on this diagram capture the same call?
Yes.
Oh, and I should ask you, in which direction on this cell tower is the phone, the 5482 phone?
It's kind of over in this area.
So you're indicating to the left of?
To the left of the tower, correct.
Showing you what's now Exhibit 139B. What does Exhibit 139B show?
139B illustrates a call between the 2792 and 5482 phones, approximately 8:40 a.m. The 2792 phone is up in the same area, up towards downtown crossing, up towards Boston. It's on the same tower. It is just turned clockwise, kind of facing south. And the other phone, the 5482 phone, is on a sector, I believe, of the same tower that is now facing kind of the northerly direction.
Just to make sure that the record is clear, I want to show you 139A. If you could note the towers that the first call bounced or was routed off of. Do you know the tower numbers?
Yeah, it's 63 for the 2792 phone. It's on tower 63, and it's 60133 for the 5482 phone.
And is that the same towers in both cases as an Exhibit 139B?
It is the same tower. It's just a different sector within the same tower.
So in both cases, it's Tower 63, but in the first case, it's Sector 2, and in the other one, it's Sector 3?
Correct.
And what does the change in sectors indicate?
It's just a different direction in which the antenna is facing.
So which way is the antenna facing on the, is that the Verizon tower up at the top?
That would be a Sprint tower.
Sorry, the Sprint tower up at the
Yeah.
top. So which direction, where is the phone now in relation to that same tower?
It is, it would be basically within that area.
So the record reflect he's indicating the area just below the tower?
Correct.
And the the number on the tower down below was 60133 in the first slide. It's now 60134. Are you saying that's the same tower?
It's the same tower, it's just a different sector.
I see. And which sector is this facing?
It is facing towards Sector 4, and it's facing towards the north, which would be above where the tower is located.
And just to be clear, the numbering system for the towers is different. One has 63-2, 63-3, and one has 60133 and 60134. What explains that?
Different technologies, there are different standards within the industry that they have different numbering.
So do the companies, the individual providers number differently?
Yes.
Now I'm going to show you Exhibit 139C. Do you recognize what that is?
Yes.
And what is that?
This is a slide that I prepared that indicates a phone call between 2792 and 5482 at approximately 9:11 a.m. And it's a incoming call to 2792. It was coming in from or outgoing from the 5482 phone.
And has the tower moved on the 2792 phone near the top? Has there been a change in the tower?
No.
How about the 5482 toward the bottom?
It's on the same tower. It is just facing towards the left of the tower. It's on a different sector.
I'm now showing you Exhibit 139D. And what's depicted here?
Another phone conversation between 2792 and 5482 at approximately 9:40 a.m. And the phones are still a distance apart, one being up towards Boston, the other one down being still towards Mattapan.
And the one toward Boston, has that changed towers?
No, it is not.
What about the one down south?
Yes, it has.
And which direction has, it's changed from a tower, which direction has it moved in terms of tower?
Moved east towards Route 93.
And which sector of that tower is the phone, 5482 phone on?
On Sector 3.
Which is, which direction?
Well, all right. It's on, essentially the tower is the sector is facing in this direction.
And that's to the west of the tower itself?
Yes.
I'm showing you slide 139E. And what's depicted here?
It's a phone call between 2792 and 5482 at approximately 9:47 a.m.
And has the tower changed for 2792?
It is not.
Has the tower changed for 5482?
Yes.
And just to refresh everyone's memory, showing you 139D again, the previous slide. By the way, just to be clear, have you mapped all the calls during this period? In other words, are there any omissions here? Are we skipping any calls?
All that was mapped was the phone conversations or the interactions between these two phones. I believe that there were other phone calls.
What I mean is any calls between the two phones omitted?
No,
Okay. So this is a log of all the calls during this time period?
between these two, yes.
And so looking back at the 139D, what was the time of that call?
9:40.
And the 5482 phone was bouncing off a cell tower down towards Upham's Corner?
Yes.
And then 139E, which you were just testifying about, it shows a call at what time?
9:47.
So about 7 minutes later?
Yes,
And where is the tower for the 2792 hasn't changed, is that correct?
that's correct.
Has the tower changed for 5482?
Yes, it has.
And where is that tower located?
Closer to the other tower, it's not sure what.
Is it near the interchange of 93 and the Mass Pike?
Yes.
Route 90?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the distance between Route 93 at Upham's Corner and the interchange between Route 93 and Route 90?
Exactly, no. I would say it's probably less than 10 miles.
And let me ask you this, to cover that distance in 7 minutes, could one do that on foot or on a bicycle?
No.
So can you indicate the phone 5482, by the way, is the 2792 phone still in the sector to the south of the tower?
Yes.
And what sector is the 5482 phone in?
It is in a tower that is facing southeast, or in a sector that's facing southeast from the tower.
Can you just draw an arrow in that direction on the screen? And may the record reflect he's drawn an arrow that points southeast from the red tower. Now showing you a slide which is 139F. And what's depicted in this slide?
There are three phone calls on the 5482 phone that are all outgoing, and they range from 9:51, 9:52, and 9:53.
And can you tell us which towers, or show us which towers 5482 is bouncing off when these three calls are made?
The 9:51 call is coming off of this tower. The 9:52 call is coming off this one, and the 9:53 is coming off of this tower.
I'm going to ask you a few more questions about that in a moment. Actually, here. So let me then ask you, show you, and by the way, just to be clear, since the previous slide, the phone call back and forth between the two cell phones was at 9:47, these calls begin about 4 minutes after that, give or take?
Yes.
Now showing you Exhibit 139G. And what does that depict?
These are phone calls that were on the 5482 phone between 10:41 and, oh, I'm sorry, 10:31 and 10:44, and I see that both my proofing and my peer on the very top of the slide that the times are off where the top of the page.
So it should be 10:31 to 10:44?
Right, that should be 10:31 to 10:44.
And the calls starting at 10:31, are the 5482 phone is bouncing off which tower?
The 1031 calls are coming off of tower 60929, which is kind of on the right-hand side of the page,
In which sector?
facing Ashmont.
And the calls from 1041 to 1044 are bouncing off which tower?
The tower on the left-hand side that's here, and they're on the sector that's facing this direction.
And is that in the
To the right of it.
Mattapan, Dorchester line?
Yes.
And I want to show you what's been marked Exhibit 139F2, which is a slightly visually enhanced version of a slide you just testified about, which is 139F. And if you could, just remind us what's depicted on this slide.
There are 3 phone calls from 9:51 to 9:53, and they are placed on the 3 towers.
If you could just maybe dot the tower.
On these 3 towers in the direction that the sectors are pointing.
So the direction that the towers appear are mapped as pointing?
Yes.
Or they point. And this represents 3 separate calls?
Correct.
Now, can you say with certainty precisely where the phone was, the 5482 phone was, when it placed the 95158 call, which is to the left of the screen?
No, I cannot.
What can you say as to where it was?
That it was in the basic geographic area that I've depicted using the kind of that pie-shaped piece, that it would be in that general area.
And what about on the second tower, tower 60128, for the 95244 call?
It would be within that geographic area that I've depicted.
And again, you can't say with precision exactly where in that area it was?
Correct.
And as to the third tower, 42229,
Yes.
where was the phone there?
It's within the area of where I've depicted, so, somewhere in that general area.
So you're indicating sort of to the southwest of where the 2 lines meet?
Yes.
Let me ask you, Trooper, are you familiar with the distances between those 2 towers, that is from sort of just south of downtown crossing to roughly the dry dock area of Black Falcon Avenue? I don't mean exact distance, but are you familiar with that distance?
Basically, yes.
And if someone made a call bouncing off the tower, the farthest to sort of northwest, that tower's 31608 at 9:51, and then made a call bouncing off the third tower, the one farthest to the right, at 9:5305, would someone be able to cover that distance on foot in that time?
I don't believe so.
If somebody were to drive down Summer Street, do you see Summer Street on the diagram?
Yes, I do.
And I'm going to hopefully highlight Summer Street without blocking oops, try to do this again, without blocking the letters. And understanding that I'm not great with this technology. I'm going to try. Actually, why don't I ask you to try, because you're probably better at this than I am. Do you see where Summer Street is indicated on the map?
Yes.
And can you try to trace Summer Street with the highlighter? See if you do.
So, let's see, it goes down here, and then it continues on.
And if someone were in a car, traveling in a car along roughly the path of Summer Street from downtown Boston to into South Boston proper, where you've ended the line, and made cell phone calls with this phone, would traveling on Summer Street from downtown Boston to South Boston be consistent with your CSLI mapping?
I believe, even though I can't tell the exact location, I believe that that's logical, knowing kind of some of the streets in the area, that would be probably the quickest route to go.
And I understand that you can't say for certain that that's the path that was taken because of the limitations of CSLI mapping, but just to be clear, that mode of travel would be consistent with the results you've mapped?
Yes.
Now I'm showing you what's now been marked Exhibit 140. Can you tell the jury what this is?
This was essentially from the beginning of the records, so from April 30th, 2015 to September 18th, I looked at all calls placed by both phones, 5482 and 2792, to see if at any time were they in this area at any other time.
Meaning bouncing off these two towers?
Correct.
And so the two towers are the two towers that are indicated by the arrows?
Yes.
60128 and 42229?
Correct.
And what did you find?
That only on June 26, 2015, that both of these towers were used.
So are those the same calls that are recorded in the previous exhibit, which is 139F2?
Yes.
The exhibit about which I asked you whether traveling down Summer Street would be consistent with that mode of, with your mapping results?
Yes.
So the only two calls that either, this is by both cell phones, or just the 5482?
This is both phones.
So again, it should say both phones in the title.
Yes, the actual map and the data is based upon both phones.
And that's indicated by the fact that there are both red and black towers in the mapping?
Correct.
Because the T-Mobile phone 5482 is indicated in red and the Sprint phone is indicated in black?
Yes.
So am I correct that mapping those two towers that are indicated in the diagram, the only calls placed to those, or bouncing off those towers between April 30th, 2015 and September 18th, 2015 by the two phones were the calls on June 26th that you testified about in connection with the previous exhibit?
Yes.
Just to be clear, does that mean that those phones were never in the area of those towers any other time between April 30th and September 18th?
No.
And I know we're repeating ourselves, but just so we're clear, why is that?
Because I can only look at the data of when an actual call or text was placed or received, and I can't tell where the phone was, whether it was off or it didn't have an interaction with the network.
So conceivably, either of those phones could have traveled in the area of those towers at other times, but if they weren't on and activated, meaning giving or receiving a text or a phone call, it wouldn't show up in the records, is that right?
Correct.
But the only time that any calls or text messages do show up in that area on either phone was that June 26th date?
Correct.
No further questions.
Good morning. Is it Trooper Crouse?
Trooper, Sergeant.
Sergeant
Yes.
Crouse, okay. Now, Sergeant Crouse, I guess the last slide you were shown was what's been marked as Exhibit 140. Now, on the top it says from April 30th, 2015 through September 18th, 2015, the only calls placed on cell ID 60128 and 42229 by 857-615-5482 were on June 26th. Now, it sounds from that heading that you only mapped the calls from 5482. Is that correct?
That is what the slide, the title at the top indicates. However, I can tell by looking at the box below that when I had mapped them, I had both phones, as there are both black and red sectors drawn on the map.
So is that your mistake?
I believe I was asked to show if the 5482 was in the area, but the data that I used had both phones on at the same time.
So was it a mistake to only limit what you say it is to 5482?
I guess that would be a fair statement that what I typed at the top wasn't completely accurate to what.
Now, it's fair to say, is it not, that in the period of time that you referred to, which is from April 30th through September 18th, that's a May, June, July, August, that's a 4.5 month period, correct?
Correct.
It shows a great deal of activity from both phones in this general area, correct?
Yes.
Did you indicate, other than picking out these two particular calls, how many other calls were made by the 2792 and the 5462 numbers during the period of time?
5482.
5482. 5482 and 2792. Did you indicate the number of calls from those two numbers that were made during that period?
Did I indicate?
Yeah. You picked out two particular calls on 626, correct?
Yes.
But you indicate that there were many other calls from those two numbers in a 4.5 month period, correct?
Yes.
Did you indicate on this diagram the number of calls made by either of those two phones in this area during the period of time that you examined?
No, I indicated two phone calls.
Okay. Is it fair to say that there's likely to have been 100 calls or more from those two phones in that area over a 4.5 month period?
When you say in that area,
Well,
could you?
the area depicted on this map, where you have
Yes.
all of this cell site location.
Within the four corners of the map, or within the sectors that I depicted?
Yes.
I think he's asking which one.
Yes, within the four, are you asking within the four corners of the map, or are you asking just on the two sectors that I've indicated?
No, on this map, where you have these dozens of cell site locations.
It would be fair to say that there are probably a couple hundred calls.
And one of the reasons that there's so much activity in this area is because this area encompasses methadone mile.
I'm not familiar with the location, but
You're not familiar with methadone mile? Are you familiar with the area around Boston Medical Center where there are methadone clinics, homeless shelters, and other institutions where homeless people, drug addicts, substance abusers often congregate?
I'm not personally knowledgeable of that, but I'll take your word for it.
So if I were to suggest that that was in that area, that might account for a large number of calls in the area from people who went to the methadone clinic and other institutions or in the area.
I'm sure that there are plenty of other, again, I can't pinpoint an area of where someone would have been. I can just say that they were within the footprint of those towers. If those places are there, then yes, I suppose that could be one reason for activity.
Now, you did indicate that in doing cell site location data mapping, it's an approximation, correct?
To a degree of certainty.
To a what?
To a degree of certainty. We know where the tower is located. That is accurate. The exact coverage of a cell tower area changes from tower to tower, the exact footprint, but where a tower is located in the basic area in which it has coverage.
So what you can say is that if, generally speaking, if a phone pings off a particular tower, it's likely that that phone was in the coverage of the tower.
Correct.
But the towers have varying degrees of coverage, correct?
Yes, they're.
And let me ask you this. You've the answer was yes.
Yes, there.
Let's try not to interrupt. I don't know if you've completed your question, your answer.
I was going to say, yes, when cellular companies lay out how they're going to have their towers, it's much like you would do putting sprinklers in your lawn. You lay them out so that there is a little bit of an overlap so that you don't have burn spots, but yet you have good coverage. So when they put towers up, they want to have good coverage and an overlap so that you don't drop calls between them. So, but you would have to be within a footprint of a tower to be able to make a phone call or a text message from that tower.
My question was, the footprint of any particular tower cannot be exactly determined, can it?
It can with equipment, but in the way that I have depicted it, no.
So basically, you look at where a tower is located, correct?
Correct.
Now, you talked about different sectors on the tower. Does each tower operate on a 360-degree basis?
Yes, it operates on a 360-degree basis, but not all towers, the sectors are laid out identical where they face their sectors.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, does each tower cover 360 degrees from that tower? Because, for example, in Exhibit 138, you've indicated a number of cell tower sites. And, for example, looking at this cell tower site, which is 42229, you indicate a certain directionality.
Yes.
Does that cell tower also have sectors in other directions? For example, does this cell tower also pick up calls on this side?
Yes.
So when you created the map, you just put in the sector which was on the tower that was picking up a particular call.
Correct. I did not map any sectors that had no calls on them.
Okay. But just so we're clear, each of these towers picks up calls on a 360-degree radius.
Yes.
And I think you also told us the other day that calls generally go to the tower that has the strongest signal.
Correct.
So am I correct that the signals emanate from the tower in all directions?
They emanate from each of the sectors of the antennas, which traditionally encompass 360 degrees. Each antenna usually encompasses approximately 120 degrees. But then there are three antennas to make up the 360 degrees.
Okay, so each tower is generally divided into 3 different antennas, each covering a 120-degree portion of a circle.
Yes.
And each antenna sends out a signal in that area.
Yes.
And it's the signal that comes out from the antenna which allows that particular antenna to pick up a call from a cell phone.
Yes.
And cell phones will, a call from a cell phone will go to the antenna with the strongest signal in the area.
Yes.
Now, you've indicated that that doesn't mean that the cell phone will go to the closest antenna, does it?
That's correct. The phone does not look at distance. It looks at signal clarity.
Okay. And you also indicated that the strength of the signal may be affected by factors other than distance.
Yes.
And one of those factors is, I think you indicated, blockage. Correct?
Yes.
So if a cell phone is making a call let's look at Exhibit 139 F2. If a cell phone, let's say, picks up, or if a cell tower location picks up a call where I'm pointing, which is 42229, that tower, that doesn't mean that the caller is necessarily within the footprint of that tower if where the person is calling from is blocked from another tower.
If the phone placed a call on that tower, it had to have been within the footprint of the tower, or it wouldn't have seen that tower to know that it could use it.
Well, what I'm saying is, suppose the caller was here, where I'm pointing, which is in the footprint of both towers, correct?
Yes.
Now, if the caller was in the footprint of two towers, and let's say was closer to, in this case, 60128, but was blocked by a building from 60128, then the call would go to another tower with a stronger signal, which might be 42229. Correct?
If they were within the same footprint, so there's an overlap, then it would go to whichever of those two towers it picked as the strongest signal.
So my point is that the call which you map at 42229 could have been made by a phone that was in fact closer to 60128, but at the particular time that the call was made, the caller was blocked by a building from the closest cell tower, which would be 60128, correct?
In theory, yes, and the fact of the matter is that it's still within the footprint of that tower, as I explained.
Right. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the caller moved from this location to this location, does it?
And as I stated, within the, I understand what you're saying, and yes, I cannot pinpoint an exact location. All I can say that it was within the footprint of that tower.
But it was within the footprint of two towers, wasn't it?
Yes,
Because
potentially, yes.
Well, what do you mean potentially? This is your map, right? You created it.
I only say potentially because if going with your theory that it is, say, over here, but the phone, I don't know if you can see, but I don't know where the phone was. So if it was over here, it's potentially, or it may not be within the footprint. I can't tell where it is, so.
All right, so what you're saying is that where there are overlapping towers, there could be blockage by either topography, that is the land, the hill, or a building, which would make it impossible to say in which tower the particular caller was closest to, correct?
I don't believe that I've stated that it was on a tower that it was closest to.
I didn't say you did.
Okay.
I'm just asking you the question. Is it fair to say that you can't tell where there are overlapping towers that the caller was closest to the nearest tower?
I think that's been my premise the whole time, that I can't tell the distance. All I can say is that it had the cleanest, it had the best signal strength to that tower. That's why it chose that tower.
Right. But Mr. Deacon is asking you to conclude or to suggest that the fact that there were two different cell tower locations indicates movement from one to the other. And what I'm asking you is, that's...
Wait, hold on, let's start over. Without getting to what Mr. Deacon said, because there's an objection, and I'm going to let the jury remember what the direct examination was, and frankly, the questions asked of the attorneys are not evidence anyway, so why don't you state your own question?
So, Sergeant Crouse, the fact that there's a call that bounced off this particular tower, and there was a call 21 seconds later that bounced off this particular tower, does not necessarily indicate movement from this tower to this tower, does it?
No.
Okay, good. In addition to blockage by a building or topography, it's also true, is it not, that the cell tower capacity may affect where the strongest signal emanates from? Well, isn't it true that towers only have a certain capacity to handle calls? And at some point, is that right?
Yes.
And at some point, if a particular tower is busy, that the strongest signal may come from another nearby tower, correct?
That's not the way the phone would get a busy signal and there would be no call would go through. After several attempts, then the phone, the system would tell it to try another tower.
Okay, so if a cell tower is busy, then that cell tower might not have the strongest signal in the area, and a call might be directed to a less busy cell tower within the same, that may have overlapped or may be overlapping in terms of its coverage.
Provided that they're within this, that they have an overlapping footprint. It's possible but not probable.
Why if there's I mean, you know, don't you, that cell towers get busy occasionally?
Yes, they do. This is not the morning of the Boston bombing. There were people that they thought there was a denial of access because they couldn't make phone calls. If every day there was that many phones that were in this area that couldn't make phone calls, the carrier would come in and add more towers so that they didn't drop, because it's about quality of service for them.
I mean, the point is, Sergeant Crouse, is that cell towers sometimes become busy for whatever reason.
Yes.
Did you make any attempt to determine whether any of these cell towers in the particular area became overloaded or busy on this particular day?
No.
Is there any way for you to do that?
The only time that the carriers are required to report that there is some type of an outage is if they cannot get that tower up and running within a 30-minute period, then they have to contact the FCC that the tower is going to be down for more than 30 minutes.
But as far as just ordinary high activity, which may affect which tower picks up a particular call, there's no way that that's recorded.
Not to the best of my knowledge.
Now, again, you were asked the distance between certain points, correct?
Yes.
And you were also asked to indicate whether the distance indicated that a person would have had to have been in a vehicle to go from one point to another.
I was asked that, yes.
And in answering that, you presupposed that there was travel by the particular caller from this location to this location, correct?
Yes, over the period of those 3 calls, I believe that there was some type of travel between them.
But in terms of where the travel occurred, you can only speculate as to specifically where the travel occurred, correct?
Could you repeat that?
Well, in terms of, you say that you said that there might be travel indicated by different cell tower locations, correct?
Yes.
But you can only speculate as to specifically where the travel occurred, from what point to what point.
Yes.
And so, Mr. Deacon had you draw a line down Summer Street, correct?
Yes.
But to say that the travel occurred on Summer Street is complete speculation, isn't it?
Yes.
In fact, it's fair to say, looking at the 3 towers in this particular exhibit, which is, I think, 139F2, that these 3 tower sites all have overlapping coverage. Correct?
I wouldn't say that all
Well,
3. I would say that the 2 to the one in the center would have overlapping coverage with the ones on either side, but the ones on the far left and right would not have overlapping coverage with each other.
well, so you're saying the one in the center, this one, would have overlapping coverage with this one, the one on the left as you look at it, and this one, the one on the right, as you look at it.
Correct, but the one on the left and the right would not have overlapping coverage.
The one on the left, this one, would pick up signals in this direction, correct? The direction I'm pointing?
Yes.
And you know that the distance of the signal emitted from a cell tower is miles, correct?
Yes, in theory, it travels.
So going out from this cell tower, its signal travels miles, and for example, it could certainly pick up a signal from this area of South Boston, correct?
The tower would be capable of transmitting down there. However, a 1-watt phone would not be capable of contacting that tower to make a phone call at that distance.
Okay, and when you say a 1-watt phone, what phone are you referring to?
So your typical phone that everybody has, they have essentially a 1-watt phone. I guess the best way for me to explain it would be, I'm going to play catch with Tom Brady. Tom Brady is kind of like the tower, great arm. I don't have a great arm. Tom Brady can throw the ball to me 80 yards away. I'm the cell phone. If I want to throw it back to him, I have to get close to that tower to be able to throw it to Tom. So the transmitter that's within the phone only goes a short distance, like my arm, but the tower, like Tom, can throw it a far distance.
And did you do any examination of these particular phones to determine what their wattage was?
Standard phones today have just under a watt to maybe a watt and a half.
Do you know, and presumably the more wattage, the longer the distance?
Correct.
Did you make any examination of these phones to determine their distance, their wattage?
I didn't.
Okay. So now, let's take a 1-watt phone. What's the range of a 1-watt phone in terms of distance?
It all depends on the area that you are in. If you're out in a desert and there is no obstructions or anything like that, you could get 10 to 12 miles. In an urban area where you have trees and water and buildings and stuff like that, it would be greatly diminished.
A mile?
The phone potentially, would look at, potentially a mile it would see towers.
Okay. So we're talking, when we look at 31608, which is the cell tower I'm pointing to, if we look in the direction, the footprint of that tower, we're talking about potentially a mile away from the cell tower, extending a mile in each direction of the particular angles that the antenna covered. So, for example, a mile in this direction, a mile in this direction, and a mile in this direction. Correct?
Yes.
And if you looked at the next cell tower, we're talking a mile in this direction, which certainly would overlap.
Except that, as I explained, when they designed areas that they put towers into, it's like the sprinkler system.
Yeah.
The reason why, if you look at the other green dots in the area, there is other coverage by other towers close into that area. That in theory, the way it's designed, the cleanest, clearest signal is going to come from the tower that is typically closer, but it has to have the best signal.
But that's in theory, isn't it? Well, didn't you just say in theory?
I'm talking, whether it connects to the cleanest, clearest signal, that is not theory. That is how it works.
But the cleanest, most direct signal may not be the nearest cell tower because of blockage by buildings, by topography, by trees, by activity at the tower. And so it may go to another tower, correct? So long as that other tower overlaps.
Whichever phone, whatever tower the phone sees is the clearest clear signal, that's what it's going to go to. And yes, it may be within the overlap.
Okay. And it's clear that if you trace the coverage, the footprint, as you put it, from this tower, it goes out this way, it goes out this way, and it goes out this way. Now, that clearly overlaps the coverage of this tower, doesn't it? Because it goes right through both of the areas covered by each of these two towers. So it's overlapping, isn't it?
The energy goes out that way. The ends of the legs on those of the pie wedge, if you will, I have drawn them at a length which I feel would probably be the distance which would be usable area within that. So
These arms that you've drawn don't go out a mile, do they?
no, I believe these are drawn at approximately maybe 4/10 of a mile.
All right, so they don't go not even half the distance that a phone could was strong enough to reach the tower from, correct?
Right. There is a difference between can a phone reach a tower and the phone finding the cleanest, clearest signal that it is going to go to that tower. There is, if you were a mile away, there are probably two other towers that are a half a mile away that could have a cleaner, clearer signal. So
If the phone wasn't blocked by one thing or another, correct?
and in this area of Boston, there are not huge skyscrapers that are creating blockages from these cell sites.
I mean, it doesn't take a skyscraper. If somebody is standing on one side of a 6-story building and the cell tower is on the other side, it would be blocked, wouldn't it?
Yes, visually it's blocked, but the RF may still travel around and see that it's the best.
Maybe or maybe not.
We're still within a couple block area.
Now, you were asked by Mr. Deacon to strike that. You indicated to, in response to Mr. Deacon's questions, that travel from this location to this location on Summer Street was consistent with the cell tower information that you mapped, correct?
Yes, I believe that within, you're looking at basically 2 minutes worth of time and probably just over a mile of distance between those, that logically it makes more sense that someone is on some type of a mode of transportation and not on foot traveling that distance.
In fact, it wasn't 2 minutes, was it? What's the timing between the first call?
9:51:58, so just shy, 2 seconds shy of 9:52, and 9:53:05.
So
That's
67 seconds, correct?
I
Yes.
think that's what it has.
Yes, 67 seconds. yes.
67 seconds. So that's a little over a minute, correct?
Yes.
And you're talking about a distance of over a mile. Did you actually measure the distance?
No, I'm looking at the scale in the lower right corner and looking at the, it's about 1,000 feet for basically an inch, and looking at that saying it's approximately probably 5 of those distances, and that it's basically a mile between 5,000 feet between the two.
Yeah, but you're measuring as the crow flies. And we're talking about travel through a busy area of the city.
Yeah.
Did you make any examination of this area to determine how long it would take to get from cell tower 31608 to cell tower 42229?
Have I made an examination? No.
Did you determine how long it was, the distance, and how long it would take somebody to drive that?
I did not.
But it's fair to say that somebody would have had to have been driving at 60 miles an hour to get from 31608 to 42229 in 67 seconds.
If you were looking at driving from tower to tower, or like you said, if it's in the overlaps, if the calls are within the overlaps, then that distance could be shorter.
If the person wasn't driving on Summer Street. But driving on Summer Street, busy area of the city with stoplights, traffic, it's not possible to travel that distance in 67 seconds, is it?
I suppose at 9:50 in the morning, that may be tough to do.
Much more likely that the person was traveling somewhere within the overlapping area of those 3 cell sites, and that it had nothing to do with Summer Street.
Again, the only thing that I can say is that it was, the calls were placed on those towers, and you're right, it could be with overlap.
No further questions.
Trooper Crouse, showing you Exhibit 140 again. Remind us what this exhibit shows.
This shows from the date of April 30th to September 18th, 2015, on both phones, that the 5482 used towers 4229, which is this one, kind of the southeast, and then tower 60128, that the only time that it used those 2 towers from April 30th to September 18th was only on that date of June 26, 2015.
So between April 30th and September 18th, Michael McCarthy's cell phone pinged off these, or bounced off these 2 towers in the Seaport district only on June 26, 2015. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Nothing further.
No recross. Okay, thank you, Trooper. You can sit down, you're excused. Your next witness?
Commonwealth calls Scott McKenzie.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury in the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you.
Have a seat, please.
Right this way, sir. Right here.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor.
So that microphone should help amplify your voice, but just keep your voice up.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. McKenzie.
Good morning.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Good morning. My name is Scott McKenzie. I'm a retired trooper from the Massachusetts State Police, and my last name is spelled M-A-C-K-E-N-Z-I-E.
When did you retire?
This January 2nd, 2017.
And how long had you been a state trooper?
24 and a half years.
Can you describe your career path through the state police?
I was a trooper, and I was assigned to the field services, and I was also assigned to the underwater recovery team for 18 years.
And what's the underwater recovery team?
It is a dive team. We do underwater searches, recoveries, and underwater security.
And what's meant by underwater security?
Mostly anti-terrorism sweeps, hull sweeps, pier sweeps, make sure there's no explosive devices, that type of stuff.
And did you receive special training to be part of that team?
Yes, I did.
Please describe the special training that you received.
I came on as an open water diver, and through my many years on the dive team, I got trained up to dive master.
And what does that mean? What's involved to get trained up to dive master?
A lot of hours, a lot of different courses, and different special equipment, and being able to run a dive as well as complete the mission yourself.
Did you become involved in an investigation into the death of Balaban?
Yes, I did.
And how did you first become involved in that investigation?
I was asked if I was available for a dive mission in September. I don't remember the exact date, but if I was available for a dive mission in Boston, and I was.
And I suggested to you Monday, September 21st of 2015. Does that sound right?
Yes, that is correct.
And what were you asked to do?
To check an area underwater on the reserve channel in Boston Harbor across from the Black Falcon cruise terminal for some evidence.
And how did you get there?
I was brought over to the dive site by a boat, a state police boat.
And did you or somebody working with you meet with troopers at the location?
Yes, I did. I was on the boat. We tied up to an old pier and had conversation with the detectives on shore, and they explained to us what the mission would be.
And what was that?
To look for possibly a bag and some type of weighted objects in the area that they identified to us, where we met them on that Black Falcon, across from the Black Falcon on the reserve channel in Boston Harbor.
And after meeting with them, what did you do?
I went into the water and performed a line search, and a short time after being in the water, I did locate items that appeared to be consistent with what they were looking for.
And what's a line search?
somebody on the surface would hold the line, and the diver would go underwater so that they can maintain a search pattern. If you were to just swim free, you wouldn't cover everywhere. So if you go back and forth on a line as they bring the line in and let the line out, you get a grid search.
And that's what you did?
Yes.
How long were you in the water before you identified items that you thought matched the description of what they were looking for?
Approximately 5 minutes.
And what did you see?
I saw a green military-style duffel bag, as well as some weightlifting plates.
And, well, I'll ask you in reference to a photograph, but how close or far away from the, sort of the, well, is there sort of a, I don't want to call it a pier area, but some pylons area, sort of a retaining wall and some pylons?
Yes, there is. It's a very old and in poor condition seawall. It's made out of old telephone pole style piers, and it's very dilapidated. In this particular area, it's a little overgrown on land and not highly traveled.
And how close or far away from the wall did you see these items?
Approximately 5 to 7 feet away from the wall.
And what was the depth of the water there?
That is tidal water. The water changes in depth with each tide, but at the time of my discovery, I was in 9 feet of water.
And what did you do when you saw the items?
I examined them without touching them, and then marked the area mentally, and then came to the surface and reported what I had seen.
And once you did that, what did you do next?
I was asked to go down with an underwater camera and photograph the items without disturbing them first, which I did.
And then what happened?
After I photographed them, I then began to examine them to see if there were any contents or exactly what was in the bag, and how, so that we could determine a plan on how to recover it.
And how long did that take you?
Maybe 15 to 20 minutes.
Did you determine a plan of how to recover it?
Yes, when I examined the bag, it appeared to be empty. There was a lot of sand and silt in the area, so I gently removed the item from the floor of the sea.
And what did you do with it?
I brought the bag to the surface first.
And what did you do with it when you got it to the surface?
I handed it off to the other crew members on the boat, and they secured it on the boat.
What did you do next?
I went down and recovered the weights one at a time.
And how did you do that?
With my hands. I did have gloves on, and I physically picked them up and brought them to the surface. One was a 10-pound weightlifting plate, and the other one was a 25-pound weightlifting plate. So it was difficult to carry that much extra weight with dive gear. So I brought them up individually one at a time.
And once you did that, what happened next?
I handed them off to the boat. All 3 items that were recovered were secured in a body bag for continuity.
And then what happened?
Then I went back down and did an additional search of the entire area for any additional items of interest.
Did you find anything additional?
I did not.
How long did it take all told from the time you entered the water until the time you were finished?
I believe it was approximately 45 minutes.
And what did you do at the conclusion of that time?
I got back on board the boat and returned to the boathouse with the boat.
So I'm going to show you Exhibit 97. Do you recognize that item? Or that photograph?
Where would I be seeing it, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not
Oh, I'm sorry. It would help if I showed it to you. It should come up on your screen. Actually, I can play it for everyone.
Yes, I do recognize that.
And what's that area?
That is the dilapidated seawall from the land side.
And understanding that it may be difficult for you to indicate on this in this photograph where you were diving because it may or may not be blocked, can you indicate generally the area where you were diving and recovered the items?
On the opposite side of that wooden wall, on the water side, approximately 5 to 7 feet away from the wall.
I'm going to show you, Counsel. I'm going to show you a photograph and ask you if you recognize what it depicts. And I know the light in the system makes it a little tricky to see, but sometimes it helps to zoom in or out. Yeah, that helps. Do you recognize what that photograph depicts?
I do recognize that photo. It's a photo that I took underwater of the evidence before I touched it. That's the way it appeared when I first observed it underwater.
Is that a fair and accurate depiction of how the evidence appeared when you first saw it?
Yes, it is.
Showing you a second photograph and ask you if you recognize what's depicted in that photograph.
I do recognize that. That, again, is another photo that I took before touching anything. It's just from a different angle. I came around the other side.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how it looked from the other side?
Yes, it is.
And showing you a third photograph, do you recognize what that is?
Yes, I do. Again, that is another photo that I took before I touched anything. It's just a different angle. That angle's similar to the first angle.
Okay. Is that a fair and accurate depiction of how those items appeared?
Yes, it is.
I ask that these be marked next 3 sequential exhibits, Your Honor.
No objection.
There's it. 143 to 145.
I'm publishing exhibit 143 to the jury. And if you could just remind us of what we're looking at here.
Okay, again, that is the evidence, the way it appeared when I first located it before I touched it.
And can you indicate, you said that there were, I think you said a bag and then a 10-pound weight and a 25-pound weight?
Yes.
Can you indicate where, you can draw on the screen, if you could maybe first circle each of the weights, you can use your finger, just use a lot of, or maybe circle the 2 weights together.
Okay. The 2 orange-colored items here are the 2 weights. The smaller one on the right is this 10-pound weight. The one on the left is larger. It's a 25-pound weight. They are in rusty condition. And then this portion here is the green duffel bag, C-type bag that is kind of torn open and kind of flapping in the breeze and the current there a little bit. But that is the green duffel bag.
Now showing you exhibit 144. Remind us what we're seeing here.
Yeah, that is a picture pretty much from the same angle as the last one, but you can see that the water movement has pulled the bag back a little. If you look right here, you can see a little bit of the bag. That 25-pound weight is actually inside the torn open sea bag, and this part down here is the part that was moving back and forth in the water column in the current. The top of this is kind of floating higher than the weights. I'm above it looking down in that photo.
And then showing you exhibit 145. What are we looking at here?
Okay, this is the same items before it was touched, just from a different angle. I got down basically beside it. So this plate is laying flat on the bottom. There's a piece of the bag under it, you can see right here coming up underneath the weight. So that weight was in the bag, and this part is raised and floating in the water. The 10-pound weight's barely visible in this, from this angle. I believe that's the corner of it right there.
No further questions.
Good morning, Mr. McKenzie.
Good morning, Counselor.
You just described your entire role in this investigation.
Yes, correct.
Is it fair to say that on the basis of your investigation, you can't tell us how long those items were in the water?
No, I located them and recovered them.
And it's also true and fair to say that you can't tell us how they got there
No,
or who put them there.
no.
I have no further questions.
Proceed, or would this be?
Either way, Your Honor, it might not be a bad time for the break.
Okay, why don't we do that? We'll take a 20-minute break, come back with my reminder not to talk about this case among each other.
So you're going to start right here, you're going to raise your right hand, you're going to face the flag. You solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury, which is now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant the body, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Swear ahead, sir.
Morning, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Swan.
Morning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jurors and spell your last name for the record?
My name is David Swan. Last name is spelled S-W-A-N.
How are you employed?
I am a trooper with the Massachusetts State Police assigned to the Suffolk District Attorney's Office.
And what are your current responsibilities in that assignment?
I am part of the homicide unit, and our primary duties and responsibilities is death investigations.
And can you please briefly summarize your career in the state police?
I entered the academy in December of 2013. I graduated from the Massachusetts State Police Academy on May 9, 2014. After graduation, I was assigned to the Brighton Barracks for approximately 3 months, and then transferred to the Millbury Barracks until I transferred to the Suffolk DA's office on July 19, 2015.
Prior to joining Massachusetts State Police, did you work in the field of criminal investigation?
I did.
In what capacity?
So prior to getting on the state police, I was employed by the Massachusetts Attorney General's office for approximately 10 years as a digital evidence examiner or a computer forensic examiner. Prior to my employment with the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, I was employed by the Middlesex District Attorney's office for 5 years, again, in that same capacity as a digital evidence examiner. Thanks.
Trooper Swan, it sounds from your recitation. Oh, let me ask you, by the way, have you received specialized training in the area of computer forensics, digital evidence examination, that kind of field?
Yes, sir.
Please describe that training.
Certainly. I've attended hundreds of hours in the area of training, conferences, and have obtained certifications in the area of computer forensics, digital evidence forensics, specifically cell phones. I have examined hundreds of computers, cellular phones, GPSs, gaming consoles, digital storage media for data found on those devices.
Trooper, it sounds as if you joined the Suffolk Detectives Unit, the homicide unit, after the discovery of Baby Doe's body. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And when did you join the unit?
July 19th, 2015.
And how soon after joining the unit did you become involved in the investigation?
Immediately.
And in what role or roles did you become involved in the investigation?
I assisted in the technical or digital evidence portion of the investigation, as well as assisted in the knock and talks of the target resident, or the residence in which clothing that was found on the decedent in regards to the clothing that was found.
So when you say the target, what's the significance of target?
The stores to which, or the clothing was purchased at Target, and we had a list of residents to which they purchased that same outfit, and we conducted knock and talks at those addresses from credit card receipts.
Credit card receipts?
Of that purchase of that.
Were you able to determine cash transactions?
We were not.
And when you say knock and talk, what does that mean for those who may not be familiar with the phrase?
Knock and talk. So we would go to the house or the residence that we had a residential address on based on the credit card and the subscriber to that credit card. Approach the door, speak to an adult there, and inquire as to whether or not they had the polka dotted pants, and most did or hadn't, and would show us, and then we would document that they did have the pants.
And what was the purpose of that?
If they had the pants, then it was safe to say that they weren't the ones that were belonging to Bellabond.
At that time, you would have referred to her as Baby Doe. Right?
That is correct.
About how many of those knock and talks did you conduct?
Personally, close to 100, I believe.
And I gather that it didn't produce any leads, any viable leads in terms of identifying the person.
That is correct.
Did you, I think you said that you assisted, before Bellabond was identified, I believe you said that you assisted in the technical side in terms of the evidence collection and evidence gathering?
That is correct.
Can you please discuss the things that you were involved in and what you did?
I authored several search warrants as part of this investigation, one of which was a cell tower dump from the tower at 190 Taft Ave in Winthrop. In addition, once we were able to identify the respective parties, additional search warrants were authored and issued.
I'm going to get to that in a minute, but can you, before you go there, can you describe what the cell tower dump in Taft Avenue in Winthrop was?
Certainly. So the cell tower at 190 Taft Avenue in Winthrop was the closest tower to which the body was found. A cell tower dump was done prior to my involvement in my assignment to the Suffolk DA's office. A second subsequent one was done on the day of the vigil that was held at Deer Island in the hopes of doing comparative analysis between those two dumps in the hopes of identifying commonalities or phone numbers that were, and that would possibly lead to some leads and hopefully identifying the person that may have been involved.
Did you perform that commonality analysis?
That analysis, both the dump, the cell tower dump that was done prior to my arrival and the subsequent second one that I can authored a search warrant for, was provided to the Secret Service, and they assisted in the analysis of that.
Did they find any commonalities? Did they find any commonalities?
There were commonalities, but they were providing hot list numbers, so the most frequent numbers that were hidden on that tower.
And were those investigated?
Yes.
And did they produce any leads, any firm leads?
No, sir.
Did you do anything else did you do anything else in the investigation in an effort to identify Baby Doe, or should we move into your role in the investigation after she was identified?
I believe we can move into the next phase.
And if you could please describe what you did in connection after the child was identified as Bella Vaughn.
After identification, a number of cell phone numbers and cellular phones were seized, and the numbers were ascertained. I wrote a search warrant for an examination of those said cell phones. In addition, I wrote a search warrant for the cell site location information associated with the phone numbers that were ascertained as part of the examination of the phones.
And did that cell site location information include cell site location information for Michael McCarthy's phone ending in 5482?
Yes, sir.
Did it include cell site location information for a phone called D's cell phone ending in 8840?
Correct.
I'm sorry.
The name D cell phone was...
I'm sorry, ending in 2792.
Correct.
And did it also include cell site location information for the cell phone that Rochelle Bond purchased on September 16th of 2015?
That is correct.
And did it include other numbers as well?
Yes.
Was that cell site location information received?
Yes.
And what was done with it?
That information was passed along to Sergeant Dave Crouse for further analysis.
Before we get there, what was done? Did all of the cell phones require search warrants, or were some done with consent of the owners?
Some were provided on consent, and others were seized and searched pursuant to a search warrant.
And you said that you sent the cell site location information to Sergeant Crouse?
That is correct.
And that's the same Sergeant Crouse who testified before you?
Yes.
Today? Two witnesses before you. And what, if anything, did you ask him to do at that time?
We made a request to have a quick analysis done so that we could take a look at some of the relevant data that would be found as part of the analysis.
And did he provide you with that?
He did.
And what format did he provide it to you?
He provided in what's known as a KML file. KML is short for keyhole markup language. It's a file format used to display geographical data on an Earth browser, or commonly used in Google Earth.
And is it your understanding that that's how he produces final form cell site mapping for court, or something else?
I believe he uses specialized software to perform a more thorough analysis. I'm not aware of what program he uses, but.
And initially, what was your primary focus in using the KML files?
The primary focus was to look to see if any phone calls or text message, anything that would require or produce a cell site location information in and around the South Boston area, to which we believe was the site to where Bella was disposed of into the water.
Is that in the reserve channel?
Yes.
And did that initial review identify any cell phones that were clearly in the area of the reserve channel during late May through June 25th?
In and around the area, yes.
But in the specific area of the reserve channel where the dump site was any phone located?
No.
So when you say in and around the area, you're talking about South Boston generally?
Certainly in relatively close to that area.
Did you also have a chance to, either you or working with other troopers, have a chance to examine initially the locations of calls and text messages made from Michael McCarthy's phone from, say, late May, or actually from May 1st through September 18th, and Dee's cell phone?
In regards to the cell site location?
Yes.
Yes.
Were you able to determine whether those two phones were always together when calls or texts were made from them?
No, there were times to which they were apart or at different towers, but
And how early on in the investigation was that clear to you, that they were bouncing off different towers in different places?
once the analysis was done, we were able to see that.
Have you had a chance to review cell site location information mapping in preparation for your testimony today?
I did briefly, yes.
And were you able to review CSLI mapping for the defendant's cell phone?
Yes.
Were you also able to review CSLI mapping for D's cell phone ending in 2792?
Yes.
And in doing that, did you look at essentially the period from May through September? Did you look at the location of Michael McCarthy's cell phone on a daily basis?
Yes.
And in particular, was there a tower or area, sort of cluster of towers, that his cell phone regularly bounced off of?
Yes.
And what area did that tower or towers cover?
The Maxwell Street address.
So these are towers that if you were making a call from Maxwell Street, your phone would likely bounce off of?
Yes.
And did you look at the days during that period for which the defendant's cell phone was active, meaning it was either making or receiving cellular communications?
Yes.
And did you see any days where the phone was active that it didn't bounce off the tower or towers that cover the Maxwell Street area?
I believe it was done every day. There was at least an indication that there was some activity in and around the Maxwell Street address off that tower.
And when you say every day, are you saying every single day or every day for which his phone was actually exchanging cellular, making cellular communications?
The latter.
So were there periods of time in your analysis when Mr. McCarthy's phone was not receiving or making cellular communication?
Yes.
In particular, was there a period of time in June from, I apologize, Your Honor. Showing you Exhibit 59, which is an excerpt from the forensic examination of Michael McCarthy's cell phone. Have you had a chance to review this during the course of the investigation?
I have.
And on this exhibit, I'll push it down a little bit. Is there a period of time during which there was no cellular communications recorded in his examination?
Yes.
And when would that period be?
After June 4th.
Until what time? Until what date?
June 17th.
And so when you say that in looking at the cell phone data, you saw calls on every day that his phone was active that were bouncing off the towers that would cover Maxwell Street, does that include June 4th through June 17th?
If memory serves, I don't believe there was activity indicating that there was cell site location information on those dates.
So just to be clear, when you say every day the defendant's phone would bounce off towers in Maxwell Street, that's every day, not including periods like this when there was no cellular activity at all?
Correct. This exhibit indicates a couple text messages from the provider of Metro PCS indicating that seeking payment, and it appears that there was a text message received from Metro PCS advising the subscriber or the user that they were in arrears of $60 and that there may be service interruption. And then a subsequent text message from the provider indicates that that a payment was made and that service appears to then been turned back on.
And while I have this exhibit in front of you, I think for everyone's sake, the numbers on the left-hand side of the records, which I think we have all been reading in two parts. So, for example, the sort of first highlighted, where it's the request for payment of $60, we've been reading that as line number 13906. Is that the right way to read that?
No, that column seems to be truncated, so that number would be 13,906.
So you read it all as one?
That is correct.
Were you asked in preparation for your testimony today to review records to try to determine the last date that there was cellular activity on Ms. Bond's Nokia phone, the old phone is what we've been referring to it, as well as the defendant's phone?
Yes.
And how did you determine the last date of cell activity for Ms. Bond's phone?
In looking at the call detail records as well as the analysis of her cell phone.
So you looked at both the call detail records that had been subpoenaed or that had been obtained by search warrant from the phone company, as well as the forensic examination of the phone?
Correct.
And what is the last date that cellular activity was noted on Ms. Bond, or was recorded on Ms. Bond's old phone, the Nokia phone?
I don't recall off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you recall what month it was?
I can't.
And do you recall, were you able to determine the last date that cellular transmissions were made from, well, actually, is there something that you could review to refresh your recollection as to Ms. Bond's phone? Certainly. What would that be?
Either the cell site location information, the examination of her phone.
I apologize, Your Honor. I'm just going to call up a document to seek to refresh his memory. Can you see the screen where you are? I can.
I take it this is just being shown to refresh his recollection, Mr. Deacon?
Yes.
Okay.
So showing you a section of the timeline from the forensic examination of Ms. Bond's Nokia cell phone. Does that refresh your recollection on the last date in which there were cellular communications to or from Ms. Bond's Nokia cell phone? Yes, based on her phone, it does. And what was the last date of cell exchanges to or from her old Nokia cell phone? May 3rd, 2015. Now, Trooper, I'm going to ask you to look at another document. Do you recognize what this is? I do. And what is it? It is a redacted Cellbrite report showing the headers of the timeline and the columns associated of the data that would be contained within the timeline. And is this from Michael McCarthy, the Cellbrite examination of Michael McCarthy's phone? Yes. And what is Cellbrite? Just Cellbrite, which is spelled C-E-L-B-R-I-T-E, is the forensic software used to conduct the examination of the cellular phones. And does this fairly and accurately depict the headings, the column headings in the Cellbrite forensic cell phone analysis? Yes. Ask that this be marked next sequential exhibit. So now showing you Exhibit 146. And there are topic headings across the column. The first one is a pound sign or number sign. What does that column heading refer to? That would list out the sequential number of the timeline, so it would go chronological. The one that you just showed us how to read all the way through instead of in two parts? That is correct. And what is the next heading? Height? What's that? It would be the data type, so if it was a text message, it may read SMS message. If it was a call, it may say it's coming from the call log. If it's web history, it might say search items. But it would identify the data type to which it's going to then display the data in the subsequent columns. What does direction mean? If it was a call, I believe it would indicate incoming, outgoing, or missed. And attachments? If it was an email, text message that had an attachment, if it was an MMS message, it may indicate that there's an attachment to the file. And what about as to locations? Locations, I believe if it had any GPS coordinates associated with that file, so if a picture was taken and there was some geographical or geotagging information, that information would be promulgated in that column. And what's the timestamp? The timestamp would be the date and time, and including the time zone of the time to which that data field or interaction with the phone transpired. In some of those timestamps, in fact, many of them we've seen, and we'll see it, I think, again in a moment, it references something UTC. What is UTC? UTC is a universal time clock
It's formerly known as Greenwich Mean Time. So,
And a lot of, I'm sorry.
so initially it's based on UTC, and then you conduct an offset to go back to the time zone to which the phone was in to accurately get at the time.
So in many of the timestamps in this case, it says UTC -4. What does that refer to?
It would be -4 hours from formerly Greenwich Mean Time, which would put it in Eastern Time Zone, depending on daylight savings.
So it's sometimes UTC -4 and sometimes UTC -5. And that just reflects the change from daylight saving to regular time.
It should, yes.
And what is this column description?
Well, we skipped one.
I'm sorry, party, right?
Party. Party is if there is a number associated with that phone, it probably would promulgate from the address book and match a number with a contact.
What about description?
Description may be the body of the message, or it may not be able to show the entire message, but it might promulgate an excerpt of the message.
And then the last column says delete.
That is correct.
And what does that column mean?
That is an indication based on the Cellbrite software that that item was deleted by the user, and it denotes that in the timeline.
So how can Cellbrite recover a file if it's been deleted by the user?
It's not necessarily recovering it. Sometimes it is, but there are times where the Cellbrite, say a text message is deleted, it in the database to which text messages are stored, it loses the indicator that the text message, or the indicator that would say that the user no longer needs to show that file. So when an individual hits delete, it doesn't necessarily delete the content of the phone or the text message, but deletes the indicator in the database, thereby not showing the deleted message on the user's phone.
And Cellbrite is sometimes able to recover those files?
Certainly.
Is it always able to recover them?
It can. I can't say always. I'm not an engineer for Cellbrite.
In preparation for the trial, were you also asked to analyze a number of different data points or a number of different types of communications to and from certain individuals?
Yes.
And did you prepare a summary analysis of those comparisons?
Yes.
Do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is it?
It's the document that I formulated as part of my testimony today.
And does this document summarize, here, John, does this document summarize the analyses that you prepared for trial today?
Yes.
Asset this be marked next sequential exhibit.
Subject to our earlier discussion, I will admit.
Exhibit 147.
May I publish that to the jury, Ron?
Yes.
First of all, were you asked to review the number of calls and text messages to and from cell phone numbers associated with COSA, an individual identified in this case by his first name, and Michael McCarthy's cell phone?
Yes.
And let me ask you first, the numbers that you used for COSA's cell phone numbers, where did that come from?
The contact or address book within Michael McCarthy's phone.
And have you seen Exhibit 58 in this trial? Or let me show it to you. I'll show you Exhibit 58. Do you recognize what that is?
I do.
What is that?
It's an excerpt of a Cellbrite report indicating the 4 numbers associated with COSA.
And that comes from where?
The analysis of Michael McCarthy's cellular phone.
And are those the numbers that you used in conducting your analysis?
Yes.
Now, oops. I just turned off my own screen. Now, in your analysis, which I guess is still up on the screen, except for mine, you indicated that as to calls to and from COSA's numbers to Michael McCarthy's cell phone, you apparently were aware, oops, you were apparently aware of a separate exhibit already introduced in this case?
Yes.
And that was Exhibit 61?
That is correct.
And have you had a chance to review Exhibit 61?
I have.
And is it a list of calls and or text messages to and from Michael McCarthy's cell phone and one of COSA's numbers, that is the one that ends in 2059, between June 1st, 2015 and July 16th, 2015?
Yes.
And is that, as far as your review can determine it, an accurate listing of those calls?
Yes.
And for the record, those calls span 12 pages of this type of printout?
Yes.
So there are 12 pages of that type of printout of calls to and from Michael McCarthy's cell phone and one of COSA's cell phone numbers between June 1st and July 16th of 2015?
Yes.
Were you also asked to count the number of, or determine the number of calls from and to any of the numbers associated with COSA and Rochelle Bond's old Nokia phone ending in 8840?
Yes.
Prior to March 1st, 2015, how many calls did you find between any of COSA's cell phone numbers and Rochelle Bond's old Nokia phone?
0.
None.
That is correct.
And did you, in looking forward, did you find any calls between her Nokia cell phone and any of COSA's numbers after March 1st, 2015?
Yes.
And how many calls did you determine there were when were they made? Between when and when?
They were made between April 16th and April 20th, 2015.
And how many calls were made during that period from or to, in calls or text messages from or to any of COSA's numbers and Rochelle Bond's Nokia cell phone?
There were over 100. There were a significant amount for this entry, I believe, if memory serves. It was 103, but I just denoted it as over 100, there meaning significant amount of conversation.
In a period of 5 days?
Yes.
Did you have a chance to examine records of Mr. McCarthy's cell phone during the period of April 16th through April 20th?
16th. Yes.
And showing you an item. Do you recognize what that is?
I do.
What is it?
It's an excerpt of the timeline, or the Cellbrite report timeline from the examination of Michael McCarthy's cellular phone.
And how many, is it? Okay, so at this point I move to introduce this. Actually, I would move to introduce this as Exhibit 147A, Your Honor, since it pertains directly to the summary.
The 147 is the
summary.
okay. So that's admitted.
I object. We previously.
Okay, as we discussed, okay. That's overruled, and I'll admit it.
147A.
Publishing 147A. Well, so reviewing 147A, what did you conclude about cellular activity in Mr. McCarthy's phone between April 16th and April 20th? But by the way, let me stop for 1 second. You indicated on Ms. Bond's phone after March 1st. Before March 1st, you had seen no calls to or from, or texts to or from COSA, is that right?
That is correct.
Then you saw a cluster of calls over 100 between April 16th and April 20th?
Yes.
Were there any other calls to or from COSA to Ms. Bond's old Nokia phone other than that April 16th to April 20th?
No,
So that was the only cluster of calls?
that is correct.
And what, if anything, did you learn from reviewing Exhibit 147A, the excerpt from Mr. McCarthy's cell phone, the Cellbrite analysis?
Again, there is no cellular activity between April 4th and April 20th. There are a couple instant messages, and there are indicators, again, from the cellular service provider of Metro PCS that a payment was due to avoid service interruption, and then a subsequent text message from the service provider of Metro PCS indicating that a payment was made. And with the lack of cellular activity in between April 4th and April 20th, notwithstanding 2 instant messages, which can reasonably be explained that there may have been a service interruption and that the phone was not connected to the Metro PCS network.
So I'm going to ask you to explain that a little more. In lines 12,956 and 12,957, there are instant messages there.
Correct.
But you say that's not indicative of cellular activity?
No, you can, the cellular phone that Mr. McCarthy had the capability of Wi-Fi or internet connection. And if he was connected to a Wi-Fi or some sort of internet, an instant message could be sent in or received.
Even if you didn't have cellular service?
Correct.
How do you receive instant messages through the Wi-Fi? What's that?
It would be an instant message through the internet as it connected to a Wi-Fi.
But other than that, there's no evidence of any activity.
There's no evidence within the timeline feature here of the Cellbrite report of the analysis of the phone that indicates that there was cellular activity between the dates of April 4th and April 20th, 2015.
And there are indicators of a request for payment and then a resumption of service?
Correct. The cellular activity appears to then resume.
Were you also asked to review cell phone records or forensic cell phone examination records regarding calls to or text messages to or from the phone number associated with Michael Sprinsky ending in 6847 and Michael McCarthy's cell phone and the phone identified as D's cell phone ending in 2792?
Yes.
And how many calls did you see between calls or text messages between Michael McCarthy's phone and Michael Sprinsky's phone in the relevant period?
Again, I indicated over 100, but there were a significant amount. I essentially stopped after reaching that volume of calls.
And how many calls did you see between Michael Sprinsky, calls or text messages between Michael Sprinsky's cell phone and the phone identified as D's cell phone during the same period?
0.
None.
That is correct.
Were you asked to review calls to or from or text messages to or from the phone number associated with Joseph McCarthy Jr. ending in 6642 between Michael McCarthy's cell phone and the phone identified as D's cell phone
Yes.
between May and September of 2015?
Yes.
And what did you find for calls back and forth or text messages back and forth between Michael McCarthy's phone and his brother Joe McCarthy's phone during the relevant period?
Again, there were significant amount of calls. I denoted in this exhibit over 100. I stopped counting once it reached a significant volume.
And what about calls between the defendant's brother Joseph McCarthy Jr. and D's cell phone during the same period?
Again, same thing. There were, again, a significant amount of phone calls or messages, communications, for a lack of a better term, that indicate that there were, again, communications between the phone number of 617-259 and 6642 and D's cell phone.
In the period starting on September 17th into the 18th, and in the ensuing weeks, were you involved in the investigation in any way other than on the digital forensic side?
Yes.
What's that?
I went to the area to which the body was disposed of in the water. Myself and numerous other troopers, and canvassed the area for video that may be found there.
Did you find any?
We found an area to which there were cameras. We inquired, and there were no, the video wasn't retained by that time. There were cameras. They were not pointed in the direction to which that road went down. And more importantly, the retention period of that video footage had elapsed.
Did you look for any cameras that show the intersection between East First Street and the entrance to the area where ultimately, at the end of which the road, there was the weight and bags were recovered?
Yes.
Did you find any?
We did not. Again, we checked the MBTA power station there. In addition, the Black Falcon did not have any cameras on the opposite side of the channel. Did not have any cameras. They do have cameras towards the end by the Boston Police Marine Unit, but those cameras were not facing in or didn't have the vantage point of anything of significance. And the retention period of those cameras were 30 days as well.
And I apologize for going backwards, but I should have asked you. When you were asked to calculate calls and texts between Joseph McCarthy's phone and his brother, the defendant's phone, as well as D's cell phone, were you aware that there was an exhibit, already in evidence 62, that reflects calls between D's cell phone and Joseph McCarthy Jr.'s cell phone?
Yes.
And were you also aware of the preparation of a report I'm sorry, I asked you the wrong question. I apologize. Let's go back. Exhibit 62 actually shows calls between COSA. Never mind, I'll leave that. Let me ask you. Yep.
Earlier you referred to Exhibit 61 and you'd shown something on the screen. Are you now saying that?
No, Exhibit 61 was what I showed. Are you aware, were you able to review the preparation of a document that shows calls back and forth between D's cell phone and Joseph McCarthy Jr.'s cell phone? It indicates on your summary, I noticed, that to also see separate exhibit. Are you familiar with the collection, or the analysis of calls from Dee's cell phone to Joseph McCarthy Jr.'s cell phone?
Yes.
And do you recognize this?
I do.
What is this?
It's a Excel spreadsheet containing calls to and from Dee's cell phone to Joseph McCarthy Jr.
Move to introduce this as next sequential exhibit.
Any objection?
No objection.
Okay, that's admitted.
And this exhibit captures the calls that you had summarized as over 100, is that correct? Yeah. And just to correct the record, and I apologize in this connection, Exhibit 62 is actually the calls between the numbers associated with COSA and Dee's cell phone. So it's not relevant to his analysis, Your Honor. I picked it up in error, but I just wanted to correct the record.
Can you move that exhibit down? Are you referring to the top of this exhibit where it says see separate exhibit?
No, 62 is actually, he summarized calls back and forth between COSA and Ms. Bond's old Nokia phone. And that's when he had said 0 before March 1st, 2015, and a cluster in April. Exhibit 62 is actually arguably the third in this triad, but it's already in evidence, which is calls and texts back and forth to and from COSA from Dee's cell phone. But he didn't review that. So I just want to correct the record. Mr. Swan, Trooper Swan, were you aware in preparation for your trial, did you have a chance to review a pullout of searches, web searches conducted on Mr. McCarthy's phone with the term Satan in them?
Yes.
Do you recognize this?
I do.
I'm showing you the second page. Do you recognize the second page as well?
I do.
What is this?
It's an excerpt from the Cellbrite examination of Michael McCarthy's phone, indicating searched items and delineated in a column format.
And the search items all include the term Satan?
Yes.
And are you aware of a similar analysis in Mr. McCarthy's cell phone that includes the term demon?
Yes.
And I'm going to show you this item and ask you if you recognize it. I do. And what is that?
Again, it's an excerpt from the Cellbrite examination of Michael McCarthy's phone, depicting the search termed items or searched items in a column format.
And at this time, Your Honor, I'd move to introduce these as next sequential exhibits.
Subject to our earlier discussion, that's admitted.
May we heard briefly at sidebar, Your Honor?
Okay.
May I publish them to the jury, Your Honor?
Yes.
This is Exhibit 149, which is the results of a search for the term Satan in Mr. McCarthy's searched items files. And looking at these and the date timestamp, are you able to determine how many of these searches were conducted before March 1st of 2015? I'm publishing this. I'm sorry, I published it to the jury.
Before which date, sir?
March 1st, 2015. March 1st, 2015.
2000, well, you'd have to keep scrolling. The entire page.
And going on to the second page, how many of these were conducted before March 1st of 2015?
It appears to be the first 9, or half the page.
And then you see one on March 2nd, 2015?
Yes.
And then the rest are after March 2nd, 2015?
Yes.
Now showing you Exhibit 150, which is excerpts from Mr. McCarthy's his cell phone search history items on the term demon. You see that?
I do, sir.
And do you see, again, did you prepare this exhibit or review it?
I reviewed it.
Is there one line 5,228 that actually doesn't include the word demon?
That is correct.
And is it your, well, is it your understanding that that's purposefully there or an error?
Objection.
Based on your understanding of what the project of the exhibit was?
If it was supposed to find the word demon, then it appears to be an error.
And do you know if that's a human error or a computer error?
I would assume a human error.
And why do you assume that?
I
Will a computer
don't have an
find
answer.
alien pimp implants, triangle shapes, if it's told to search for the term demon?
Correct.
Will it?
It would have.
A computer will find alien pimp implants, triangle shapes, if it's given that, if it's asked to search the term demon?
Oh, it would not. Sorry. I misunderstood
And
the
that's the
question.
basis for your assumption that it's human error?
Yes.
How many of these were searched, indicated they were searched before March 1st, 2015?
Eight, including the one that has the error, so 7.
And how many, well, that one was also searched before 2000.
It was. It doesn't include the word demon.
And how many were searched after March 1st, 2015?
Can you scroll down? Or up? Keep going.
Before March 1st, 2015.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. After or before? I'm sorry.
After.
After. 7.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
You talked about a number of different searches, which you summarized, correct?
Yes.
Well, there was a summary that you prepared, correct?
Yes.
And you summarized the number of calls from and to certain people between certain dates?
That is correct.
Now, did you just prepare this summary on the basis of what you were told to do?
In preparation for Trial, yes.
But was it your idea to come up with these summaries?
Not individually, a collective.
And you counted up a number and you stopped at 100?
I did. It showed a significant amount.
My question is, did you stop at 100?
I denoted 100. It was more than that.
But when you counted it up, you stopped at 100.
No, I counted and denoted that it was more than 100.
Were you able to count above 100?
Yes, sir.
And what's the reason for not providing in your summary an accurate number of how many calls were actually made, as opposed to stopping at 100?
I believe I indicated that it was a significant amount, and over 100 was a significant amount for me to stop and indicate in that summary.
But you certainly were able to count over 100.
Certainly.
Now, you also talked about a number of searches or a number of search terms that you identified in phone records, some containing the term Satan or satanic.
Yes, an exhibit was shown, and I talked about that, yes.
Okay, you're saying you didn't prepare it.
I did not prepare the exhibit. I did not do the examination of the cell phone.
All right. When you reviewed the exhibit, did you go to these search sites to see what came up?
These were search terms, so this was a database of terms search, I believe.
Right, so this was a database.
It didn't indicate the location to which, what website it went to. It was, it's my understanding of the Cellbrite report that these were words typed in and they were searched terms.
Right. So what you're saying is somebody put in those search terms and did a search based on those terms?
Yes.
Okay, and if that were done, some sites would come up, correct?
Correct, but the database that is showing within that Cellbrite report only reports the terms indicated or inputted into the device.
But my question is, did you put in those search terms to see what would come up?
Did I?
Yeah, did you?
No, sir. It's an examination of a phone. It's what was there. I did not search further than what the items were displayed on as a result of the examination of the phone.
Right, but you could have searched, put in these search terms in a computer and seen what came up, correct? Yes or no?
Could I?
Yeah, could you?
Yes.
Could whoever prepared this exhibit have done that?
Yes, but you're misleading it. It's not a fair, accurate representation. These are search terms that were inputted in. It's not finding out what was found after the fact. What was displayed before the jury is the search terms that were inputted by a user of the phone, and that's what's reported in that exhibit.
Right. And you didn't attach any significance to what was actually would have turned up if somebody had used these search terms, did you? Yes or no?
It may be in the entire Cellbrite report.
Well, did you review the entire Cellbrite report?
At one time I did. I don't recall it.
Did the Cellbrite report include anything of that nature?
I don't recall.
But the Cellbrite report would only include what actually was input on the phone, correct?
No.
No?
Inputted on the, I'm misunderstanding your question.
All right. Would the Cellbrite report include information to show whether the user of the phone had actually gone to any particular website?
Yes, Cellbrite has a feature, if it's supported for that phone, to indicate the web history. What we're looking at in that exhibit is the search term items. So those are the items that are actually typed in to the device by a user and not the web history of the phone.
Okay, so you could have done a web search history or a web history to determine whether the person who input the search term actually went to a particular website.
I believe that was done. It's not the entire report that was submitted as the exhibit.
But you don't have any of those results, do you?
They're not before this jury. The report may indicate that, but the web history was not the exhibit that we're talking about.
Yeah, I know that, but I'm asking you, if the search term is significant, then why would the actual website to which the user went not be equally, if not more significant?
It may or may not be, but it may not necessarily just be a website. It could
But
be a
you're-
picture search. It could
but
be
you're-
a number of different things. But it's what the exhibit was the search terms inputted by a user of that phone and displayed in the report. It's not the web history. You're trying to compare two different reports, one of which is not before this court.
Well, it's not before the court because you didn't put it before the court, right?
That's not a fair assessment.
Okay, well, who didn't put it before the court, if it's not before the
I am
court?
testifying to what was put in front of me.
Yeah.
They asked me to describe what that item was, and I did.
Okay, so the prosecutor did not put in front of you the web history showing where whoever used this device and searched using this term actually went. That wasn't put in front of you, was it?
It was not.
Okay, and as a result of that, we don't know where the person who put this term in actually went to with respect to the search history or the web history, do we?
Not based on that exhibit that was put before me.
Now, did you make any determination as to the number of calls that were made from 2792 to COSA, or any of the numbers associated with COSA, at the same time that Mr. McCarthy's phone was in service?
I don't recall.
Well, in your summary, you indicate the number of calls that went from 2792 to COSA when Mr. McCarthy's phone was not in service, correct?
No, that's inaccurate. That's not what the summary talks about. The summary talks about the Nokia phone.
Okay, well, we have exhibit, it's exhibit 147.
Is that the summary?
No.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Shapiro asked him if he had calls between 2792 and the defendant's and COSA's phone. That's not what the summary has. The summary has Ms. Bond's old Nokia phone.
I'm saying this can be cleared up if we had the summary put before the jury. And it's an exhibit in evidence, and it's exhibit
147, Your Honor.
147. So, Mr. Shapiro, if you want to show that.
Exhibit 147, did you or did you not do an analysis of the number of calls from 2792 to any of COSA's numbers at a time when Mr. McCarthy's phone was not in service?
I did not.
did you do an analysis of calls from 2792 to, which is Dee's phone? Did you do an analysis of the number of calls to Dee's phone, on Dee's phone, to Rochelle Bond contacts, or contacts that were found in Rochelle Bond's phone?
Did I know?
If you recognize what this is.
These appear to be the call detail records from Sprint for the phone number ending 2792 that have been altered in a way to which, or denoted, not altered, but denoted with a key, and there may be highlighted calls.
Does this contain CSLI data?
It does.
All right, so it's not only call detail record, it's call detail and CSLI.
That is correct.
Showing cell tight towers and so forth.
Yes.
Okay. And the key highlights in yellow calls to COSA when McCarthy's phone is in service. McCarthy's phone being 5482, the number ending 5482. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you review that and determine whether or not the highlighted items reflect calls from 2792 when Mr. McCarthy's phone was in service?
So the yellow ones.
Yellow.
Your Honor, objection. May we be heard sidebar?
Is this an exhibit in evidence?
No.
So it seems before he can testify to the contents, I think it has to be in evidence?
All right, then I would offer this.
I
Mr.
object. May we be heard at sidebar?
Okay.
Trooper Swan, do you know offhand or on the basis of your examination which periods of time Mr. McCarthy's phone was out of service in the period from May of 2015 to September of 2015?
Not definitively.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Mr. Shapiro asked you whether, when you did your summary, which I should bring. When you prepared your summary as to calls back and forth between numbers associated with COSA and the defendant's cell phone and Ms. Bond's old cell phone, he asked you whether you had done the same analysis for D's cell phone, 2792. And are you aware that Exhibit 62, previously introduced, believed by the defense, does in fact exactly that?
I believe so, yes.
I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you, Trooper. All right. I think I had your title right there. So, Mr. Deacon, I know it's Reporter Till, but ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I do have another matter I have to deal with between 2 and 2:30, so we're going to take a longer recess. I therefore kind of want to maximize our time, perhaps, and get started with this witness, if that's all right. Does that work for you?
Oh, certainly.
Okay. So we're going to work till up to 1, maybe a little thereafter, then I'm going to give you an extra long lunch break, and we'll resume hopefully around 2:30 to take the rest of the afternoon, because I think this may be the last witness. Is that right, Mr.?
Consider.
Okay, for the Commonwealth, so. And the witness is?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts called Joel Balducci.
Do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give this court and jury and the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant at the bar shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. That's right.
Mr. Balducci, will you please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record?
Trooper Joel Balducci, B as in boy, A-L-D-U-C-C-I.
And you're a Massachusetts State Trooper.
I am.
And how long have you, where are you currently assigned?
I'm currently assigned to the Suffolk Detective Unit. It's part of the State Police assigned to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office.
And what are your duties there?
Death investigations in Suffolk County, serious crimes and death investigations in Suffolk County.
How long have you been a trooper?
Approximately 17 and a half years.
And where were you assigned before you were assigned? How long have you been with the Suffolk Detectives Unit?
A little over 12 years, I believe.
Okay. And where were you assigned before that?
Prior to that, I worked in several barracks across the state, Grafton Barracks, Brighton Barracks, as well as the South Boston Barracks.
And what kind of work did you do there?
They'd be described as being a road trooper or a highway patrol, handling motor vehicle accidents, citations.
Did you become involved at some point in the investigation into the identity of a girl, subsequently loosely referred to as Baby Doe, on a beach in Winthrop in June of 2015?
Yes, I did.
And when did you become involved in the investigation?
I would say a week or two after the initial investigation began.
And what was your role initially?
Initially, as our office began fielding tips about the child's identity, I was tasked with tracking down those tips, whether they be by phone or however they came in the office, and any other directives that Trooper Herman, the lead investigator, gave to me.
When you said track down leads by phone, or did you do other form of tracking down leads, or was it all phone tracking?
Other ways, directed by Trooper Herman, might have gave me some leads to track down as well.
About how many leads did you track down?
I would say over 25 or 30.
And when you say tracking them down, did you use the phone to follow up, or did you go out in the field to follow up?
Both. I would do both.
At some point, by the way, did any of the leads that you tracked down lead to a identification of the girl?
No.
On Thursday, September 17th of 2015, did your role in the investigation change?
Yes.
How?
Upon the direction of my supervisor, Lieutenant Murphy, and Trooper Herman, some information came, and we were trying to locate Mr. Michael McCarthy.
Okay. At that time, were you looking? What was your role in trying to look for Mr. Michael McCarthy?
I was tasked with going to the Quincy area because we had some information that Mr. McCarthy's father would be living in that area.
And did you encounter his father?
I did not.
Where did you go to try to find his father?
In the area of Hancock Street, I believe it was 618 Hancock Street, there was a plumbing shop there, as well as, I can't recall the exact address, but I believe it was the Quincy Point area of Quincy where his father's residence was located.
And did you find his father at either of those residences?
No, I did not.
What time of day or night was it that you were looking for Mr. McCarthy's father?
It was at night.
What did you do? Well, at what point did you stop looking that night for Mr. McCarthy's father?
I believe it stopped when Trooper Herman had some information that Mr. McCarthy may have been at a hospital.
And what did you do?
I just waited for further direction.
Okay. How long did you have to wait for further direction?
My best recollection is several hours, but that's from the 17th leading into the 18th. At one point, I was directed by Lieutenant Murphy to respond to Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, where Mr. McCarthy was ultimately located.
Do you recall what time you got there?
I would say morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, maybe.
What was your responsibility there?
Just to stand by and monitor Mr. McCarthy until I received further direction.
Did you receive further direction?
I did.
What was that direction?
I was directed to conduct an interview with Mr. McCarthy.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Was anyone else present beside you and Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
Who else?
Trooper Timothy O'Connor was there. He's also assigned to my unit, as well as Trooper DeFosis, and I believe another trooper that I can't recall who else, but those individuals were monitoring Mr. McCarthy before Trooper O'Connor and I showed up.
Where did the interview take place?
Inside the hospital room.
The defendant's hospital room?
Yes.
And was it recorded in some way?
It was.
How?
It was audio recorded.
Approximately how long did the interview last?
I would say a little over 30 minutes.
After you completed that interview, what did you do?
Once the interview was finished, I took the tape recording and brought that directly to the district attorney's office.
And what did you do after that?
I stood by further.
Did you participate in anything further in connection with the case either that day or later?
Later, I responded to a Maxwell Street address to assist in a search warrant.
And when was that, if you recall?
I believe it was a couple of days, maybe it was the 23rd. I believe it may have been, it was a couple of days after my interview.
And what was your role in the search warrant on Maxwell Street a couple of days later?
Just, again, assisted in the search warrant.
Did you interview any witnesses other than the defendant in connection with this case?
Oh, I did.
Who's that?
Miss Marilyn Santana.
And who's she?
She was identified as a neighbor of the 119. I'm sorry, she was a neighbor that lived at 119 Maxwell Street.
And how long or short an interview was that?
It was very brief.
Did you document it in some way?
I did.
How?
I wrote an initial report that I made contact with her and summarized briefly what she had told me.
Your Honor, at this point I would propose to introduce and play the recording of the interview, the Trooper Balducci's interview with the defendant.
How long is that going to be?
It's witness said it accurately a little over half an hour, I think, Your Honor.
Okay, so that goes a little bit further into the lunch hour. We give everybody here a break.
Because I'm coming back at 2, as well as the court reporter and the clerk. So we'll take a recess now, come back at 2:30, hopefully start shortly thereafter with my reminder not to talk about this case. We'll see you then.
Interview rather than stand at counsel table, rather than stand at the podium.
Fine. Is there any, the redactions are very minimal redactions, but one of them has to do with the name of a child.
That's right.
And how's that being dealt with?
What it used to say was, he answered, one of the other kids supposedly went to live with a mother for a little while. The detective interrupted and said, yeah, and he said, but I think the kid's name is Jaden. And then the detective said, did anyone have contact while you were there? Did you see
Hold
anyone?
on. Yeah, we have, this is all on camera here.
Sorry.
So it's essentially...
The sentence, I think the kid's name is blank, is, that sentence is redacted.
Do you want me to say anything to the jury? In other words, when it plays on the tape,
It's not, the redaction doesn't show up. They close it up. So my suggestion would be not to tell the jury that it's redacted.
I have no objection.
So yes, Mr. Deegan, you were about to play an audio tape, I believe. But maybe you had...
Trooper Balducci. Yes, thank you. Trooper Balducci, when we left off, you indicated, well, we actually talked about a different topic, but in your testimony earlier today, you indicated that you conducted an interview with the defendant in his hospital room. I think you said the Beth Israel Hospital?
Yes.
On September 18, 2015. By agreement, the parties have pre-marked a thumb drive that contains that recording. With the court's permission, may I play it for the jury?
Yes, I see that they're passing around what looks to be a transcript of that conversation.
And that's Exhibit 151A, Your Honor. That's copies of Exhibit 151A.
So 151 is the thumb drive, is that right? And then 151A is the transcript?
Yeah. I think that's too loud. I'm sorry, Your Honor. This is my first time using this system to play, so I hope I've got the volume at a reasonable level. No.
Okay, today's correct. September 18th, it's approximately 10:24 hours. My name is Trooper Joel Balducci. I'm assigned to Suffolk County Detective Unit. Also in the room,
Trooper Tim O'Connor, Suffolk County Detective Unit.
and
Trooper Greg DeCosi.
he's also with the Suffolk Detective Unit. We're here with a Michael McCarthy, right? Michael, if you can just state your name and date of birth. Michael McCarthy. And we're at the Beth Israel Hospital. They're admitted to 5-2, correct? This is the building, 5 building. We're at the Beth Israel Hospital. Yeah, we're okay. We're conducting an investigation, but before I ask you any questions, Mike, I just want to read you Miranda rights. Okay? Do you know what Miranda rights are? No, I'm not sure. Well, let me read them to you. You have a form right here. Form. You have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Yeah. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. Do you understand that? Can and will. Okay. Yeah. You have the right to talk to a lawyer for advice before we ask you any questions, and to have him or her with you during questioning. Okay. If you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed for you. If you decide to answer questions now, you still have the right to stop questioning at any time. Do you understand what I read to you? Yes, you do. Okay. Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now?
Yeah, I don't even know what it's about, so.
Well, again, this is totally up to you. I need to read you these rights, and it's your choice whether you talk to me or not. If you want me to read these rights to you again.
No, I understand the whole rights thing. I'm just saying I don't.
We'll explain everything to you after we go through the paperwork. We'll explain it. What this is about after we go through the paperwork.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah.
So having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now?
So far, yeah, so far.
Yes, okay. So I'm checking off the yes box. And if you could sign here, it's where it says subjects and commission. Right there. So I'm going to sign underneath it. And just because of, can you write the date and time inside? It is, again, September 18th. That's approximately 10:27.
What time? 10:27.
It's September 18th, and it's 10:27. Yeah. So just to get a little background, like, where are you staying now? Where do you live?
I'm kind of bouncing around from place to place.
Where have you been living over the past month or so, or a couple months?
Mattapan.
Whereabouts in Mattapan?
Maxwell Street. I'm also staying in Quincy on Hancock Street.
What number on Maxwell Street?
I think it's 115.
115 Maxwell. What about Quincy? What number Quincy Street?
618 on Hancock.
618 Hancock.
And then a few of my friends just randomly here and there.
What are friends?
Just a bunch of kids, a few different kids I grew up with. Just never for long, just like maybe a night here or there.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
Southeast.
Southeast. And did I ask you, what's your date of birth? How old are you?
I'm 34.
34? What's your date of birth?
5/29/80.
5/29/80?
Yeah.
What about a phone number? You have a cell phone number?
I did, but I may have lost it. I'm not sure because 857-615-5482.
5482.
Yeah, I was talking to nurses about that this morning. I can't find my money on my cell phone.
Who'd you come in here?
People in and out of there sometimes, but no, like, roommates that stay there. And people would, like, spend the night sometimes, but no roommates.
So it was just, she just lived there by herself?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you?
Yeah.
How long did you stay there with her for?
About 6 months.
6 months? What's her phone number? Do you have her phone number?
I didn't even have a phone, I don't think.
No. Are you working? Do you work at all?
I don't, I'm waiting to collect this and say I was working until I shattered my shoulder, and then I was doing plumbing.
How'd you shatter your shoulder?
When I had a seizure.
What about, I heard, did she work? No? What about, a car? Do you guys have a car?
I got,
What kind of car do you have?
I have a Chevy Devil.
What is that? Is that Partier or something? What is that?
That was, I took an ambulance there, so.
From Maxwell Street?
No.
From
The, this was like the fourth hospital I went to.
That's okay. All right, so, where's Rochelle now then?
I have no idea.
When's the last time you talked to her?
Probably like Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday.
Tuesday would have been what? Monday, Tuesday this week? At the beginning of this week, maybe?
Yeah.
And when you left Maxwell, was she with you when you left?
She left Maxwell.
When you left Maxwell to come to the hospital, right?
Yeah. She left. We went to BMC, got into like a argument.
You and her?
Yeah.
What day was that?
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah. And
then she left.
Yeah.
Came back in and said, like, walked back in the hospital, started acting crazy again, and then walked back out.
So would you guys consider yourself like boyfriend and girlfriend or no? No. All right, so back to Maxwell. You said people come and go and stay. Is it a one-bedroom apartment, two-bedroom apartment, or what?
It's 2 bedroom apartment.
So what was the first? The first bedroom was what, your bedroom?
No, the first bedroom, like, I basically stayed on the couch, like a lot, and so would she. She would like stay on that couch, almost no one would stay in the first bedroom, and then the back bedroom was her daughter's.
Oh, okay.
But her daughter got taken by DSS. It's like her fourth kid has been taken by DSS.
Really?
Yeah.
How many kids does she have? She has 4 kids?
From what she tells me.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know that one.
So the first bedroom was, you guys stayed on the couch, the first bedroom was hers, and then the back bedroom was her daughter's, but your daughter stayed there. Was her daughter ever staying there when you were there, or no? Or was it tell her she was taken by DSS before you got there?
Just, she was at first for like the first few months.
Okay.
And then,
Okay. So, how did that work? Did you really take care? Did you take care of her, or no? Just started
I just like play with her sometimes.
How old?
She had to run to the store.
How old was that girl?
2.
And what was her name?
So,
What about the other kids? Did she have other? Did you know any of the other kids that got taken to the DSS?
no.
Do you know where they were? Or?
I think she said one of them was with her mother. Got taken by DSS. I don't know if her mother had an DSS or from her mother. I'm not sure if that's how that happened. I'm not sure if...
What's her mom's name?
I don't know.
Do you know where she stayed, Liz?
She told me before, but I can't recall.
Close by or no?
I know it's like up in New Hampshire somewhere. So it's in Massachusetts.
Oh. And Michelle's like, did you say like 40 or how old?
In like her early 40s.
And what did she do? Did she work or no?
She said she used to be a stripper back in the day.
Yeah. Okay. So when you first got there, you said about 6 months ago. How did you meet her? How did you meet her?
I met her just outside.
Outside where?
Walking by.
Like that piano?
No. I'm on the methadone clinic and by like where I go to methadone clinic, shopping by.
Was that like, when did you have to know her?
In Boston.
In Boston. Is that the one by like South Bay over there?
Yeah, that area.
All right. So you met her there about 6 months ago?
Yes.
And how'd you get to move in with her?
Actually, I met her probably more like months before that.
Yeah.
I met her like months before. Like I met her and went to the party and we talked on the phone a few times and then I ended up over her house one day and just didn't end up leaving.
So when you first ended up over her house, who was, were any of the other kids there or just that, or just Bella?
Bella.
Bella was staying there then?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, none of the other kids.
None of the other kids. Do you know any of the other kids' names or no?
She said it was
That's all right. So you show up there and she's there and Bella's there. Did you just stay there for from that day on or no? How did that work?
No, I mean, a good amount of the days out of the week I would stay there, but sometimes I still go back when the day was there.
So you guys she wasn't working and you wasn't working?
Right.
So what were you like day? What did you do all day?
Well, not much really. I mean, I kind of have this guy out a few times a day. I help my friends some of the time of the day, plus I'd have to go and take the train to the methadone clinic and then all the way back every day. So that would end up being like 3-4 hours out of the day, like waiting for a bus and then taking it.
So who took care of Bella on a daily basis? Rochelle?
Yeah.
Did she go to school or not go to school?
Rochelle?
No, Bella, the daughter.
No.
So 6 months ago, how old would Bella have been?
2.
So you guys were staying together. Were you there when DSS took her? No?
No.
How did that happen? What happened there?
I don't know if somebody called on her. She always used to complain about, the kid that she had the baby with.
Who's that? You know who that was?
I have no idea, but he showed up at the house the last few nights before I came in here.
Yeah.
Pounded on the back door one day. And he was waiting for people to, come in the house because the front and back doors are locked.
Yeah.
And when people would go out, he would just kind of shoot right into the house.
Yeah.
So, he flew on the back door one day and was banging on the back door. And then the next day he came, not the next day after, it was 3 days after that.
Yeah.
He came in the front door at midnight.
Yeah.
And was banging on the front door again and yelling and screaming, and then she's like,
Did you have any involved with that guy?
I've never met him before in my life. And I just figured to stay out of it.
That's a good call, right? Yeah. All right, so 6 months ago you moved in, and you, Rochelle, and Bella are there. How long do you think you guys were living together with Bella before she was taken from DSS?
That wasn't long. It wasn't maybe a couple months, maybe.
Couple months?
I mean, 'cause I remember my family took her out to brunch for Easter, and it wasn't too long after that
So did you just, sometime after Easter?
Yeah, it was definitely after Easter.
Did you have to report or anything, or did you just come home and the baby and the baby Bella was gone?
See, I'm not sure. I don't have babies.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how it works. But Rochelle's had, from what I understand, all her kids taken from DSS. And she told me that the guy said to her, we can either do this the nice way or the hard way. I can either take the baby now or I can show up with a bunch of cops. And
Rochelle told you that?
She said that, yeah, that's what the guy said, so yeah.
So, were you staying there every day? You were staying there every day, right?
At that point, yeah.
And so did you just come home one day and Bella was gone? Or?
Yeah. And I was like,
was it a process? Did they come? I don't know the answer, so I'm asking, was it a process? Does DSS, did they contact her and then give her a warning, or was she?
I've not had to deal with them.
Did she talk about it? She complain about it?
I don't know how it goes. I mean, she had mentioned that somebody had said something to her because she gave her a spank in the ass.
Really?
Yeah, and she was like, nowadays DSS can get taken for nothing all the time. She's like, it's ridiculous. She's like, the other kids I lost were all for nothing. She's like, the courts get involved and it's for nothing. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but.
Did anyone else take care of the child, or the children that she had? Like a mother, sister, brother, no?
Like I said, one of the other kids supposedly went to live with the mother for a little while, but
did anyone have contact while you were there? Did you see anyone taking care of Bella beside her?
No.
Did you take care of her at all?
Yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Oh, he wants to play with her. I'm not a father. I never really had nieces and nephews. Now we have one brother.
Yeah.
So I'm not too good with feeding kids. But I'd always play with her. We'd have fun.
You had a relationship with her?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, how did that whole thing go down when you come home and Bella's gone? What happens then?
I was just trying to calm her down. She was kind of really upset,
Did anyone come looking for her, or did the father come looking for her? Did the father?
The father was in Florida. He had just come home. I don't even think he's come home for 10 days yet.
Yeah.
From what I understand. Anyways.
What about, was DCF, Children's Family, did they come check on Bella or anything, or no?
No.
So she didn't have like a caseworker or anything?
No.
No preschool, she was too young for preschool, right? Or whatever, I don't know. What about, and I'm just trying to figure like the living arrangements, right? So were the living arrangements okay for her? I'm just trying to figure out why DCF would come take her out. Did she have her own bed in the room?
Yeah, she had a little bed in her room.
What was the bed? Was it a crib or was it a bed?
It was a bed.
Like what do you remember what it looked like?
I mean, it was like a small, probably single bed.
What about any toys? Did she have toys in
Yeah,
it?
she had so many toys.
So when Bella gets taken, where did all that stuff go? Did she still keep it? Is it still in the house?
The bed and yeah, everything's still there.
So all the bed that she slept in and all the toys and stuff, and she's kept all that stuff for her?
Yeah, all that stuff's still in the house, yeah. I mean, it's really surprised because, I mean, she seemed to be a really good mother.
Yeah.
For sure. She really did.
So you walk in and describe your apartment. So what is it, a living room? You just gonna
You walk in the front door, there's a living room right to the left.
Yeah.
Then if you did like a U-turn type deal, then the front bedroom's there.
Yeah.
Then it's like the kitchen, and then the bathroom to the left, the back door to the right, and then the back room that way from down there, everything.
So in the back, right? So that's where the bed is still there and toys and everything else.
Yeah, the toys and things still scattered, pulled off.
All right. So what about did you and Michelle ever argue or anything?
Yeah, we had sure arguments.
About what?
Some normal stuff, couples argue, we have nothing.
Yeah. Did Michelle ever? Did she ever try to go see Bella anymore or no?
No, which I kind of, I don't say I thought it was strange, but it was just kind of like, you know, whenever I bring it up, she wouldn't want to talk about it. She would just not want to talk about it at all.
When you asked, what do you bring up how?
If I would say like, you know, are you working on getting Bella back at all?
Yeah.
She would just kind of be like, listen, I've been through this before plenty of times. Once they take your kids, you don't get them back. You don't get them back. And, you know, I hate arguing, especially with females, so I was just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
You know, I could tell she was already pretty wound up.
And you don't know where Rochelle is now?
I would guess at her house.
Yeah.
I would guess. I'm not 100%. I've been here for days.
What would you say if I told you she was talking to us? She's talking to the state police right now. She's with some troopers talking to the state police right now. And she's sort of talking about the same things that we're talking about right now. But her version of the story is a lot different than what your version of the story is. About the relationship, about Bella, about the living arrangements and stuff like that. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't know how much different it could be.
No? Right. Well, again, that's why we're here trying to talk to you. We're trying to just find out really, you know, what happened between you and her, or what happened to Bella, because Bella's not in DCF custody. And Rochelle is telling us something different about what happened to her. And that something different involves you.
Like what?
Well, that's why I'm here trying to, you know, we, as investigators, we just don't listen to one side of the story. We like to listen, we talk to both people involved. So obviously you and Michelle were involved in this situation, and we're trying to get the truth out. So I'm here talking to you, just trying to find out what happened to the baby, and you're telling me some things that just don't line up, but I want to hear what happened. I think I know what happened to the baby, but I want to hear it from you, and this is one chance for you to tell the truth about what happened. Now, a lot of things could have happened, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Everything that I know and have been told is everything.
Really?
Absolutely.
So you had no interaction with the child, or something didn't happen to the child that could have caused harm to that child?
I had interaction with the child, yeah, but I know what it goes down to. No. Like playing with her, talking with her, being around the house when she was around there, going out with the dog, taking her in the park, things like that.
Why would Rochelle tell us that you hit the child? Hit them?
Couldn't tell you.
No?
No. And I don't think Rochelle would let someone stay around with
Did you
her child.
Did she ever hit the child?
Not that I saw, no, that's why I was kind of surprised when she even said, someone springs her on the set, someone said springs her set, someone said they saw her springs her on the phone, I was even kind of surprised at that.
Listen, Mike. People go through a lot of life, okay? I'm going to be straight with you right now, okay? And I can just tell talking to you, you look extremely nervous. It's like the weight of the world's on your shoulders right now. I know what happened to Bella. These troopers in the room know what happened to Bella. We've been conducting an investigation for months now. Okay, we talked to a lot of people. We're still talking to people. You know what I'm talking about. And now's your chance to get ahead of it and tell the truth. Okay? We want to know why it happened. And, you know, if the oh shit button went off, that it happens. But to sit here and lie to me about it and not come, you know, get it off your chest and do the right thing for the little girl, Rochelle's already talking. We already have the whole story. We're not making that up. I can't come in here as a state police officer and lie to you and tell you what's not, what is and what's not happening. She's telling the story. Now's your chance to get out from under whatever you're under and come clean and tell us what happened and let us figure this out. Because if you just sit here and blow smoke up my ass and our asses and lie, you're just digging yourself in a bigger hole.
I'm not blowing smoke up anyone's ass. I'm saying, you know, I might look nervous, man, it's because I'm about to go into a major surgery in an hour.
No, like you said, I'm talking.
It couldn't have caught me at the worst time.
It's okay.
Like,
you're doing great. I'm telling you right now, you're doing great. You know, the whole interview was going great until I sort of confront you with some things that I believe aren't truth. You know? So, again, something happened to the little girl, okay? And even things that you said about the apartment, those aren't true. You've already been to the apartment. Listen, I'm trying to tell you little bits of information that I know to show you that I'm not in here jerking you around. I'm here to get your side of the story of what happened to Bella. And now is your chance to tell us.
I told you everything else up to my recollection. If that apartment is different, maybe you guys went the wrong apartment. Because what I said again is you go to the front door, the living room's to the left, then the front bedroom's behind that, then you walk and the kitchen's out there.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that.
And the
Mike,
bedroom's...
Mike, I'm worried about where Bella is.
Yeah, no, I am too, because I'm told she's been on DSS.
Mike, you understand what he's saying though, when he says Rochelle's talking, he's giving more information than you are? Do you understand what that means?
Yeah, I've seen enough TV to have an idea what that means. I know it's on TV, but I'm just saying to understand what that means.
What do you mean when she says that she's talking, she's giving a totally different story than what you're giving? And we're giving you a chance to give your side of your version of the story.
I'm giving my truthful side of the story.
Why would Rochelle, answer me this, and I'm asking you this good question, why would Rochelle tell us that you hurt her baby?
Maybe to cover her own ass if she was. There's nothing else I can think of. Why would Rochelle let me hurt her baby?
I'm asking you. We're asking you that question.
Doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to us why she would just pull your name out of a hat and say, Michael McCarthy hurt my baby.
Maybe that was the only one around.
Yeah.
No one else was really around. She didn't have too many friends.
Yeah. I mean, if something went wrong or something while you were watching the baby or she was watching the baby or if something went sideways and things happened, and it was an accident, or what happened, or it was just a spanking or something, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Mike. I'm just trying to figure out, I can't comprehend how a child like that could get hurt. Killed, right? You don't know she's dead?
No.
You don't know Bella's dead?
No.
Really?
No.
Huh. She's not?
Not to my knowledge.
Are you sure?
Positive.
You didn't drive over to East Boston?
No.
Southie?
No.
Boston Harbor?
No.
No?
No.
Mike, we've been handling this investigation for months. Been all over the news. We're here right now talking to you. This is not some sort of homicide detectives. Okay, we've been doing this for a long time. Okay? This is the real deal. This is your chance to get out from under this. Okay? We know what went wrong. We know what happened to Bella.
I don't think you do know what happened to Bella. She's sitting there basically saying I did something, so you don't know what happened to her.
Then you tell me what happened to her.
I have no idea.
Okay. It is 10:54, and we're going to end this interview. Okay, today's Friday, September 18th. It's approximately 10:24 hours. My name is Trooper Joel Balducci, and signed the Suffolk County Detective Unit. Also in the role.
Trooper Tim O'Connor, Suffolk County Detective Unit.
And
Trooper Greg DeFosse.
He's also with the Suffolk Detective Unit. We're here with a Michael McCarthy, right? Michael, if you can just state your name and date of birth.
Michael McCarthy,
And we're in Doctors at the hospital.
Jury, pass up their transcripts here for a minute and talk to counsel at sidebar. Collect the transcripts. I'll let the Mr. Deacon finish up the direct here.
Very short number of questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Matt Grocher, I'm
Yes.
here. I'm going to show you this item and ask you if you recognize what that is.
Yes.
What is that?
That's the Miranda rights warning I gave Mr. McCarthy.
Is that the one that you discussed in the interview that we just heard the tape of? The Miranda rights form?
Yes.
And is that Mr. McCarthy's signature?
Yes.
Did he sign it in front of you?
Yes.
And is that your signature?
Yes.
I move to introduce this as the next sequential exhibit, Your Honor.
No objection? No objection. Okay, that's admitted. Exhibit 152.
Nothing further.
Okay, so we discussed the logistics of where we're going from here, and we've made a decision among ourselves that this would be a good time to recess, even though it is a little bit early. We're going to resume tomorrow morning, but I do understand this is the last witness before the Commonwealth rests, so I'll be talking to counsel, both counsel, about what's coming up for tomorrow. I do want to instruct you again not to talk about this case with anyone. This will become very familiar, but they're all very important instructions. To refrain from reading or listening to any news reports. To stay away from anybody you know to be associated with the case, and not do your own independent investigation. To the extent questions linger in your mind that have not been answered by the evidence or the witnesses who've testified here in the court, don't go look up or try to find answers to those questions on the internet. So with that, we'll let you go. I'm hoping that we can start promptly tomorrow at 9. We will work a full day. We have a full day slated, or at least set aside for that. And again, the hope is to get this to you sometime next week, hopefully earlier rather than later. So we'll see you tomorrow morning. To the jury in that transcript that there had been an agreement to redact. It was just the very tail end of the interview. I know, Mr. Shapiro, you wanted to think about this issue, and I'm going to allow you to do that. I take it then there's nothing additional that needs to be said now. I mean, Mr. Deacon has made it clear this was inadvertent on his part. There had been a redacted portion or transcript produced to counsel, and the assumption was that we were all reading literally from that. Turned out that the unredacted version was what got distributed. But I don't know that that's going to be necessarily a problem, but I want to have Mr. Shapiro think about that.
My request would be to mark the transcript that I had prepared and sent to defense counsel some time ago with the redaction of the invocation of right to counsel. This is the copies that we brought here today to distribute. And I asked that be marked for identification. That is the copy that has the redaction on page, it has it on page 33 and 34, which is the invocation of right to counsel, but does not have the redaction on page 20, which has the name of the child. Then I'd ask that this be...
I see. This is part of the confusion.
Right. Okay. So what happened was, I'm quite convinced that the woman who does this, when she didn't understand that she should have taken the redacted transcript and make a further redaction, or she made a mistake, I'm not sure which. So she took the raw transcript, redacted the child's name, but because that didn't have the redaction of the right to counsel invocation, that's what we got. So I'd want to mark this is the copy of what went to the jury, which has the redaction of the child's name on page 20, but lacks the redaction that was originally made to the invocation of right to counsel, just so that down the line, if anybody's reviewing it, they understand what the issue is. And I want to be very clear that the final version that the jury heard had both redactions. In other words, the audio version was properly redacted.
Yes, the audio version was redacted. As I was reading along, I realized that there was some final sentences that were in this written transcript that were not coming out in the recording, and I could see the reaction from counsel. I told the jury to immediately hand up their transcripts within, I think, a few seconds of realizing that. But they obviously had a chance to read it, so that's the issue, whether that's a problem.
I'm just not clear. We marked two exhibits, the audio, and then we marked another exhibit, the transcript.
No, I think, first of all...
What is that?
Okay.
What's in that?
That's the same as what was just marked for identification. That has the redaction on page 20 of the child's name, but it does not have the redaction on page 33 and 34, which is the indication of right to counsel.
So the exhibit does not have the final redaction.
Right now, what was admitted into evidence was this erroneous, unredacted version, right, Mr.?
It has the second redaction. It has the redaction of the child's name,
That's what
not the redaction of the invocation of right to counsel.
So obviously, if we're going to change that around, we'll have to
Get a
proper exhibit. But I think what Mr. Deacon's point right now is that keep the exhibit that's been marked in evidence, marked as it is. But then, for the record, make it clear that we have the two different versions that we've been talking about.
And that's just for identification,
just for identification. So we have, the first for identification is, what was it marked?
It hasn't been marked yet because it wasn't agreed to.
Okay. What are the next letters, Lynn?
Double A and double B.
Okay, so double A, as I understand it, is going to be the version that had redacted from it the invocation of right to counsel.
That's right.
But did not have the redaction with the name of the child.
That's right.
Okay, that's double A for identification. Then double B for identification is what was essentially handed out to the jury today.
And became, I think, an exhibit.
And is also an exhibit. If we're going to be making a change, we're obviously going to have to correct the exhibit. But right now, we have AA and BB to show it an appellate court what it is we're talking about right now. Okay? So we'll reconvene tomorrow. You're going to be resting after we deal with this issue. And if you are going to be calling witnesses, you're going to have those ready. Working a full day tomorrow, you think?
I have, I think, maybe 7 or 8 witnesses lined up.
Okay.
I think a lot of them we'll be sure.
Okay.
It's hard to predict.
Okay, so if, you know, if we just have them all ready, we obviously still need time to have a charge conference as well. So whether that occurs next week or we fill the time that we don't use tomorrow, that is, we run out of witnesses for some reason and have somebody come in on Monday, we can take that time to discuss the charge. And I know there's motions that have to be heard as well. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.